today, April 28th, 2022. I want to welcome everybody. This is a much larger crowd than we normally have for our meetings, so welcome. We start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if everybody would join me, please, and stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first thing I'm going to read today, and please listen up, is called the Appeal of Decisions from the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with a decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. The first order of business today is to ask if all the commission members have had an opportunity to read the minutes from our March 24th, 2022 meeting.
Yes.
And is there a motion?
Move approve. Minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
All right, the approval of the minutes from the March 24th, 2002 meeting have been approved. We have a number of items on our agenda today, and I understand that we have a member of the Metro Council that would like to speak because of a pending meeting early this afternoon. So I'm going to open up the public hearing. Mr. Fields, if you could just tell us what the public hearing is about briefly, and we'll hear from the councilman, and then I think we're going to hold the public hearing in abeyance to get some other matters done.
The public hearing today is for consideration of rules related to the operations of entertainment transportation companies and vehicles. And Councilman Sean Parker is here and would like to speak.
Councilman Parker, please introduce yourself, and then feel free to, well, I'll open the public hearing, and please speak.
Thank you, Commissioners, for being here today and for accommodating. I've got to get over to Planning Commission here shortly. I'm going to hang around for some of the discussion, but I'm Councilmember Sean Parker, represent the 5th District. That's kind of the west half of East Nashville. And you know, as we've gone through this legislative process, we initially had a sort of promulgated the rules down to the specifics at the council level, but sort of as, you know, through the process we decided that it was better to sort of turn that, the specifics of the rulemaking over to this body. So I do appreciate y'all being willing to take that on and appreciate Mr. Billy Fields' leadership. This body and Mr. Fields' leadership is a big part of the reason we were comfortable sort of putting it to this body to make all those rules. So I don't have much comments about specifics of, you know, the transportainment vehicles themselves. I wanted to talk a little bit about the zones where they'll be permitted. And initially my thought on the zones was, let's just keep them on the other side of the river completely. And, you know, after having some discussions with some industry folks, as well as someone I know that enjoys utilizing the transportainment vehicles, you know, the amenities sort of right there across the river, things like the stadium is a popular site for these vehicles to circle and do photographs and stuff, and that seems fine to me. I think that the truck stop is a common place for folks to stop and use the restroom and get some food, and that seems completely fine to me as well. So what I would suggest in terms of zones on East Nashville is to use the inner loop of the interstate as the boundary. So if you look, you'll see, you know, the river, and then the interstate loops around, and as you sort of get into the more heart of East Nashville on the other side of the interstate, you know, we haven't had a ton of the transportainment vehicles in East Nashville, but we have had some, and I generally hear about them when they show up. The noise in the residential neighborhoods, we've had them parking at our neighborhood parks and sort of utilizing the parking lot as an area to continue their activity in. We had sort of unbelievably some folks come through what I would call disaster tourism after the March 2020 tornadoes, which was really just unbelievable. I'm not implying that that's a common practice in the industry by any stretch. That was egregious. But anyway, I feel like, you know, there's a place for this stuff if it's properly regulated, and that is, you know, primarily downtown, and then sort of some of the surrounding amenities. And I would put forward that the inner loop of the interstate makes a very natural and effective boundary there on the zones as far as the east side goes. So again, I'm super duper grateful for y'all. It's going to be a long day, I'm sure, and I'll be reviewing this meeting when the video is released. I'll catch the parts that I missed today, so I'll be there with you in spirit. So thank y'all again for allowing me to speak at the beginning here.
May I just ask a couple
Yes,
of
sir.
questions? As I understand, initially, these types of vehicles were regulated by the state, and the state then delegated the authority over these vehicles to Metro, Nashville, Davidson County. And the council has now asked this commission to promulgate rules regulating those vehicles.
Yes, sir, that's correct. So initially, we've always had authority over low-speed vehicles and pedal carriages, but the larger motorized vehicles, I believe it's over 10,000 pounds. I might have the specifics wrong there.
10,000 pounds and 15 passenger.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Those were completely under the state's purview, and they were not putting any regulations on them. But sort of as this market has grown and emerged and evolved, you know, they were willing to sort of allow some level of local control, which is what we decided to sort of pass through. A lot of the reason why we decided to sort of empower this body to set those rules is because this is kind of an emergent market, right? So if it has to come, every time we want to make a rule change, we got to go back to Metro Council, and we got to pass a bill through 3 readings. We're not able to be as responsive to the conditions within the industry and on the ground as this body is, with y'all being focused on that particular activity. So I think it's more appropriate. You know, initially I was a little, you know, a little shaky about not promulgating specific rules at the council level, but in discussions with Mr. Fields and some of my colleagues on the floor, I have, you know, become a supporter of this approach.
And in the past, before the state delegated authority for regulating these larger vehicles by the local community, there was some tension between the local communities, I wouldn't say being flooded, but certainly being exposed to a number of these larger vehicles, but having no authority to regulate them because that was at the state level.
That's correct, sir. I mean, we it's my understanding we couldn't do zones, we couldn't do times, we couldn't limit the number, we really couldn't do anything under the previous state legislation. So definitely grateful for the folks up on the Hill for working with Metro and stakeholders on this to allow us this opportunity to get it right.
And Councilman Parker, what I liked hearing today also was that the reason that the rulemaking authority was pitched to the Transportation Licensing Commission is because we can respond quicker to an evolving situation as this new industry may be coming into Nashville, or is in Nashville.
Yes, sir. I think that's a big part of why I got comfortable with this approach.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Any other? All right. Well, thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Now, I am going to hold the public hearing on the entertainment transportation vehicles in abeyance for a few moments because I think it would be economical for us to go on to some other business that we can perhaps dispense with relatively quickly. Mr. Fields, you want to take the next agenda item, please? The next agenda item.
Yes. We'd look at the passenger vehicles for hire. We have a number of companies that have asked to operate as another passenger vehicle for hire. Allegiant Transportation, LLC, Benchmark Livery, Black Horse Livery, CM Luxury Transportation, Elite Transportation Tennessee, LLC, Focknoxon Group Incorporated, City Valet, Inc., Legendary Tours, Inc., MS Limo Services, LLC, Mustafa Limo, Nashville Ambassadors, LLC, Nashville Private Car Services, LLC, Old Boy Transportation, LLC, and Sam Limo of Nashville, LLC.
For the benefit of everyone today, could you explain what kind of vehicles and what these applications are?
Other passenger vehicles for hire are cars that could be sedans, they could be limos, they could be shuttles, and then we have something called other or special purpose. In most cases, these are vehicles that they're certainly not taxi cabs. They could be anything from the vans that you see operating on the street, or the sprinters, or stretch limousines as well. So these are a mix. There's also a industry part, that the only part of Uber that we have any responsibility for is something called Uber Black. In order to operate an Uber Black service, an individual has to start a company, has to be regulated by the local government, so some of these are very likely Uber Black vehicles.
Have you reviewed the applications, and can you tell us your opinion about them?
Yes, sir, all the applications have been filed, we have checked and we've double checked. In the last couple of meetings, we've certainly talked about applications, and we want to make sure that we provide everything. By the same token, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to respond. But the documentation is there, the LLC material and so forth.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Any discussion?
Just in our prior application packages, we had, I guess, a lot more information relative to each applicant. Is that correct?
More information?
Yeah, did we have was there more than the applicant, because some of them previously had.
Typically what we provide,
Background checks.
and we've got all we bring them with us. Typically what we have is the application, the proof of insurance, the registration of the vehicles, any LLC or business license. We normally do not include the background checks unless there may be something special we want you to review. Sometimes there are applications we're also asking you to review the driver as well as the company. In this case, the background checks are done only on the company.
On the company. And so the difference when we reviewed the last couple of meetings, background checks, they were in the package?
With OPVH, if we've done that again, it would have to be a driver that it would have been an owner that was off.
It's on the driver trying to get the license.
Correct.
On the company. Got it.
And generally, you provide the background check when there's a question about either a number of convictions or something that was left out of the application. Otherwise, you or your staff review the background checks and make sure that the applications are okay.
2 and 3 times in the office.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Mr. Fields, do we need to do this as naming each individual, or because they have been mentioned,
You could have a motion and read the names again. I've read them in the record, but I think you certainly can do that.
Oh, wow, okay. Give this a shot. Make a motion to approve, is this, DeBlanc Transportation, or is this DeBlanc Transport?
I think, starting with Allegiant
Allegiant.
Transportation.
Oh, Allegiant Transportation, okay, I have to check. Allegiant Transportation, is this Benchmark Livery, if they're part of this package?
Mhm.
Black Horse Livery. C&M Luxury Transportation LLC. Elite Transportation LLC. This is the Faulknerson Group. Legendary Tours is not part of this. PMS Limo Service. Mustafa Limo Service, Ambassador LLC, Nashville Private Car Services, Old Boy Transportation LLC, Jam Limo of Nashville LLC. Make a motion to approve these applications.
Is there a second?
Second. Some discussion? I've got a different list on the agenda. You said that Legendary, or not, Foxton Group or Legendary Tours wasn't a part?
I don't believe Legendary Tours or Nashville Bronco was a part of that.
Nashville Bronco was good.
Nashville Bronco is not.
Separate.
The only one you left, you actually neglected on Legendary Tours, but if we
Okay,
add that
Legendary
in,
Tours,
the
okay.
Bronco is a separate hearing.
Okay, I would like to add Legendary Tours, Inc. to that list as well for approval.
There was one that began with a J that you read?
Jam Limo of Nashville LLC,
J-A-M?
JAM.
I think it was
Sam.
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 Oh, that's an S.
Sam.
Sorry. It looks like
It's typed on the agenda
Right.
really well.
the handwriting here looks like a J.
Got it.
Thank you for that.
Sam
did the
Limo
same
Nashville.
thing.
Sam Limo of Nashville.
All right, just for clarification, I'm going to read them off real
Yes.
quick, okay?
Please,
All
thank
right,
you.
as I understand, Commissioner Carr has made a motion to approve the OPVH applications for Allegiant Transportation's Benchmark Livery, Black Horse Livery, CM Luxury Transportation's Elite Transportation's TN LLC, Falk Knotson Group, Inc. / City Valet, Inc., Legendary Tours, Inc., M&S Limo Service, LLC, Mustafa Limo, Nashville Ambassadors, LLC, Nashville Private Car Services, LLC, Oh Boy Transportations, LLC, and Sam Limo of Nashville, LLC.
That is correct.
All right. Is there a second to Commissioner Carr's motion?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion before we go on to a vote? All right. All those in favor say aye, please. Any opposed? All right. Now, Mr. Fields, there's also on there a review application for Nashville Bronco Tours. I know you had some
Yeah.
concern about that one.
It wasn't concerned as much, Nashville Bronco Tours applied, their application is in order. Their vehicle's a little different than anything that we've ever licensed. He applied at the same time, actually applied in that same time period as entertainment transportation vehicles. But his vehicle is a 1974 Bronco that has been modified. There are photographs available as part of your packet that describe what it is. The definition of a limousine, for the purposes of licensing, is, would you like to read that?
Yeah. A limousine means a motor vehicle except a taxi cab or sedan designed or constructed to accommodate and transport passengers for hire with an extended wheelbase and expanded seating capacity. The vehicle shall have additional rear seating capacity, area, and comforts, and shall be designed to transport not more than 15 passengers, including the driver.
Does everyone have in their package or have available the pictures?
If anybody doesn't, I have some.
And Mr.
nice
Beatty should be
color
present
photos I can pass
to
around.
speak.
Is Eric Beatty present?
Right here.
Come on up to the podium, please. Mr. Fields, would you state what was your concern regarding this application as a OPVH?
Well, it wasn't as much concern. Typically, under OPVH, they're the vehicles prior to the Mr. Beatty and I met, and I don't know that I have the concern as much as. Again, I don't know that I have as much concern about the vehicle as such, because again, we asked, and there's no amplified music. There's no beer being served on this vehicle. It's a tour vehicle. So it's just a unique vehicle, and it's a little different than most of the limousines that we typically come in and see. Because a limousine could be a stretch limousine, it could be a long stretch, it could be a Hummer, it could be a van, it could be Sprinters. This just basically, as someone said, Billy, it's sort of a convertible limousine. So the question becomes, is the commission, I just wanted y'all to be able to see it, but from a definition standpoint, it strikes me that it would meet the definition under the OPVH vehicle ordinance. If we had a tour and sightseeing ordinance, I might actually ask to do that, and I do have some comments and thoughts about that a little bit later that I want to share with the commission, but I just really, everything's in order. The question becomes if you're comfortable with it being under this section. As we talked, because he didn't know if he might have to go to the entertainment transportation section, or if there was going to be another something coming down the road. So that's the reason I brought it to the commission for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Do the commissioners have any questions about the vehicle here that they'd like to address to Mr. Beatty? Is it Beatty?
Beatty.
Beatty, Mr. Beatty.
I do.
Okay. Commissioner
This
Carr?
photo here, I noticed that the seats kind of protrude over the back tailgate here.
Yep.
And I don't see in any of your pictures, I do see that you show that it was welded to the frame
Correct.
on the back side, but Does that tailgate still have the ability to open?
No.
Is it welded shut as well?
No, it'll open about 4 inches, and that's it. And then it hits those upright braces. But, you know, the latch still works, it's not gonna be utilized in any capacity, but it does unlock and open just a little bit.
Yeah, I would think that, and if anyone can see this photo, what I'm talking about here is the seat. It looks like about 6 inches or so, it comes out over the back of the tailgate. And I noticed that in the photos, the actual tailgate itself does not show any welding or anything that's other than a normal latch that would keep that back gate from opening and actually people are sitting there. So I'm concerned with if for whatever reason, because that's not welded, if that gate were to open, how it would affect the people that are sitting in these seats.
It wouldn't factor in the slightest, whether it's open or closed. The seats are above it, there's no contact anywhere. I mean, I could take the tailgate off and it wouldn't matter.
So the seats themselves are not resting on this
No.
tailgate as support?
Not at all. The resting on those two welded upright braces, support struts.
Which are welded to the bumper and
And
the frame?
the two rear ones are bolted directly to the frame. It's not it looks like it's bolted to the bumper, but the end of the frame comes out and the bumper's attached to that, and it's bolted right directly to the frame. And then underneath it, the 4 uprights underneath the vehicle are welded directly to the frame.
Now, what is the manufacturer's weight capacity for this particular vehicle as it's set up? Because it's definitely not the factory weight capacity.
I've got customized leaf springs that have additional super stiff leaves in it. I can get 10 people on it, it doesn't sag an inch.
Even when you turn?
Yep. That was my first consideration, and I beefed that up.
Have you tested this in any way?
Have I
Put
what?
some sandbags back there?
No, I've had my
taken
friends.
a test drive?
I'd put 10 people in it to make sure it was sound, and it was great. Cruised all over East Nashville, it was perfect. I got air suspension there to raise it up and down, you know, if I needed.
And the entry to this vehicle is all through this
Passenger door,
one passenger door here?
correct. Seat belts all the way around, no drinking, no music, it's just me talking for 90 minutes.
Is that the big speaker in the back? Is that for to amplify your voice?
Correct.
All right, I had a couple questions, Mr. Beatty.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the interior view and some of the exterior views of the seats that are around there, and I would have to say this looks like it's a tour vehicle that you're intending to drive people around and talk about Nashville and educate them about our fine city.
Correct.
All right. How does that fall under the definition of a limo service in your
I don't know,
view?
you guys said limo, I don't know where that
Okay,
came from. It's the
all
first I heard it today, but it's basically a miniature monster truck. And
Yeah.
I mean, the monster trucks are running fine, and so I just assumed this would be considered the same thing, just a smaller version, not nearly as high off the ground, and I got seat belts. And it's bolted directly to the frame. As you know, monster trucks are just bolted to the bed,
But your intention is to take on passengers to provide a tour of the city
correct.
with no music and no alcohol
No,
being
and,
served.
mostly traveling at a very low rate of speed, and not venturing, 2 blocks north of Broadway, 2 blocks south, 2 blocks west, and that's about it. Don't go over the river.
And do you have any history of providing historical tours of Nashville?
Correct.
What is that? What
I used to work for Joyride as a golf cart operator.
Okay. Are you from Nashville?
Nope.
Any commissioners have any other questions?
I've got one other question.
Absolutely.
What's the pickup and drop-off destination, point for this
It's
vehicle?
totally flexible, it just all depends on what works best for both of us.
So there is no office, home area that you
No, I
intend
just
for
be
your...
operating, I'm in this very little administration, I just operate out of my home, I garage it at my home. I'm 5 minutes from Broadway and yeah, and so we just coordinate, pick up, drop off, you know, based upon what works best.
So if I called you to rent out or lease this vehicle, we would just pick a random parking lot, random area to be picked up and dropped off in?
No, there'd have to be some reason to specify. I mean, I'm not gonna go to the nations to pick somebody up. I mean, I try to get everybody to meet me down at a specific location. I like to start at the Country Music Hall of Fame, is where I have an ideal idea about what I wanna do, but it all depends, you know. I can pick them up at their hotel, you know, they might be downtown already, they might be at Tootsie's, you know, it's just completely flexible.
Thank you, sir.
I'm curious, how long have you been operating?
Well,
I saw you touring yesterday with some people.
yeah, I've been trying to test in the waters, and so I was, like I said, a golf cart tour guide for 5 years, and so started launching this thing.
You've been driving the big, I mean, first, it's a super cool Bronco.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just, it's awesome.
Thank you.
But I'm curious, how long have you been operating tours out of this vehicle?
For a year.
For a year, got it. Are you a handful of tours a week or a month, or?
It's
Ebbs and
hot and
flows.
cold. All depends, you know. Sometimes I don't do any for a couple days, and sometimes I'm swamped.
You know, you mentioned the speed that you go really, really slowly, and that's something that will, I think will be an ongoing discussion among this commission and everybody in Nashville for a long time about traffic.
Sure.
Can you go faster than 10 or 12 miles an hour?
Oh, absolutely.
No problems with overheating or?
No.
I was having a long discussion with one of my buddies who just sold a '74 Bronco that would overheat. And he didn't sell it for, you know, a lot of money because it would overheat when it was driving slowly in traffic when he was going to pick his kids up from school.
Haven't,
But it's been
hasn't
okay.
an issue. Hasn't been an
Okay.
issue, and I don't expect it to be an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
I make a motion that we approve the application for
Second?
Nashville Bronco Tours.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask the commissioners, as you know, we are volume limited in this room in terms of our ability to amplify. So as you speak, if you could speak up, unfortunately, the microphones you're speaking into for the most part are not amplifying. They're for Channel 3. As we know, there's usually 6 or 8 people here. So if you could speak up, that would be really good.
Thank you, Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Beck.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, so we have approved Bronco Tours as a OPVH then.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fields, there is another matter on the agenda regarding OPVH changes, requested changes. Can you update us on that?
Yes, sir. Anytime there are changes to the face of an application for a OPVH company, the commission has to be advised and take action. In this case, we have address changes, 3 address changes, as well as an LLC addition. Able Limo Services for an address change to 204 Knoll Place, Nashville, Tennessee. Determined Destination Transit LLC for new address at 1611 Railton Court, Apartment D, Clarksville. King's Transportation LLC for new address at 1816 Winding Way Road in White House. And LeBlanc Transport is adding an LLC status. The paperwork is, again, it's just a matter of, it's more of a, you could obviously turn it down, but the goal is for this to keep accurate records, and that's what they're required to do.
So this is a housekeeping matter.
Yes, that's what I would classify it.
Is there any questions of Mr. Fields regarding these requests for changes?
I'll make a motion that we accept the address changes for Able Limo, Determined Destination Transit, and King's Transportation.
And note the addition of an LLC status for DeBlanc Transport.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we're back to the public hearing, I believe, right, Mr. Fields?
Actually, you have 2 public hearings.
2 public hearings. You want to take why don't you bring the first one up, okay?
I can do that. first public hearing is consideration of a delayed implementation of SUMD Rules Section 080, adopted 5/27/21, to the extent that it requires the permitted operators to offer the public a number of powered or non-powered bicycles equivalent in number to the ratios of bikes to scooters that they propose to have in the response to the RFP within 3 months of the issuance of the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. The Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, known as NDOT, requests a delay in the implementation of this rule in furtherance of NDOT's intention to declare a moratorium of changes to the curbside until the conclusion of Connect Downtown traffic calming study to be completed first quarter 2023.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing on the request for a moratorium by NDOT on any additional, how do we describe that necessarily, Mr. Fields? Any additional,
Just in general, what the purpose is trying to control the sidewalks a little bit. Most of what's going on, not most of, the study is a very comprehensive study that, you know, frankly, we could talk about a really long time. The goal is to be able to limit the number of changes and various encroachments on all of the sidewalks related to the dockless bikes as well as dockless scooters. The study has been ongoing. It's a study being entertained by WeGo, TDOT, Downtown Partnership, many, we've already had the kickoff meeting, so many partners to, so what they're kind of trying to do is freeze the world and let's get the study done. It has been clear to me in conversations with the director of NDOT, she is not opposed to scooters, she is not opposed to bikes. At this point, however, she and the department believe we need, I won't call it a cooling period, but a resting period at least, to be able to get the study done, get it done right, and get it done as quickly as we can.
is there anybody here to speak on that? Work your way through that crowd there.
Hi.
All right, please introduce yourself and
Yeah.
then you can address the commission.
My name is Nicole Williams. I live at 4425 West Lawn Drive in District 24. So we love studies here in Nashville. We like to study and study and study and study, which is great. But this study of downtown has, I don't know how many studies at this point we've done of downtown, and now we've got one that's going to be, you know, the be-all, end-all of downtown mobility studies, which will be great. But that is a year from now. I think that is a really long time to ask people who have been looking for alternative methods of transportation, which would actually improve the traffic flow downtown. It's a long time to ask those folks to wait and to keep waiting. And I don't think I'm just speaking for myself when I say that, frankly, like, we have a tendency in Nashville to study something to death and then not act on it. And I think that sort of creates issues with credibility of the studies that we do, and it creates, it makes people frustrated with continuing to wait and wait and wait. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
The end. Thank you.
Mr. Fields, has anyone else submitted a written request to speak on this matter?
I'm not aware of them. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this issue? We do have one more. Matt Haskell, well known.
Hey, Billy. I just have one question. I was wondering if you could go back to the beginning of the agenda item and explain to us what the ratio means. I understood an RFP for multiple, it sounds like these are, is it one for one?
No.
I guess that's the question.
I don't have it in front of me, so we'll have to work off of a memory unless I'm looking at anybody else that might. My memory was that we would allow up to 25%. So at this point, they will be eligible for 125. The commission then established a rule last November that would allow expansion after they hit a certain number of rides per day per scooter. They could apply for as many as 50. During that time period, if they were granted, they couldn't ask for another 60 days. So that's kind of where we are in, so that's, and that would include bicycles or scooters in terms of the of the increase of any vehicles.
So this would be 125 dockless bicycles probably?
Yes, it could be that many.
Is there any restriction on where those go?
In the community,
Yes, sir.
no.
So they can be in the parks and other places around town?
I can't speak to the parks. I know they're having some issues, they're having
Sure.
some debates and so forth on where they may and may not be. But in terms of the community, it would be, they would be treated, I suspect, and again, we do have representatives from the SUMD companies that could talk about the issue of where they would be staged or set for the mornings, but they could literally be anywhere. And that's kind of what got us to this point of why the request is being made.
Okay, so just to clarify, we have a request to delay 125 dockless bicycles.
Up to 125.
For another year.
Actually, just to the first of the year, so it'd be the remainder of this year.
And is that 125 each or
No, just
125.
total?
Oh, each.
Each.
No,
each.
Each, okay.
Three companies.
So we're looking at
I can actually read the rule section if there's for clarification. Each operator shall be allowed to have an initial fleet of 500 scooters. In addition to the 500 scooters, within 3 months of the date of the issuance of this certificate of public convenience and necessity, each operator shall offer to the public a number of powered or non-powered bicycles equivalent to the number of ratios of bikes to scooters that was proposed in their response to the RFPs. With respect to Bird and Spin, they may increase their number of bikes and e-bikes to match ratio proposed by Lime. Any powered bikes that the operators add to their fleet per this provision must meet the definition of Class 1 electric bikes as defined in Tennessee Code Annotated 55-8301. Any other type of powered bicycles would be subject to the further fleet expansion criteria in subsection C of this section, which is below. Bird and Spin may have as many as 125, which is what Lime put in their RFP. So that's the rule that is specifically mentioned.
What is the rule, the number of the section for the rule? Did you say 08?
It's, I'm sorry, I think it's 09. No, I'm sorry, yeah, 090B.
090B. So do I understand that the request from NDOT is to have a moratorium on 090B?
Correct.
Okay. Which would put a moratorium on scooters and
Well-
e-bikes for the most part.
Basically, what they're asking for is basically just to delay the implementation of the rule. In other words, allow the rule to not be in effect.
And the delay is for what date next year?
Well, they're saying first quarter of '23.
She has
So that
there's a
could be
traffic study that's
March.
underway.
Yeah.
It's 60 days after
Yeah.
the traffic study is complete. The traffic study is due to be complete sometime in the third or fourth quarter of this year. So 60 days prior. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move that
Wait
we.
a minute, we're still
Oh,
in a public hearing, aren't we?
can we make a
Yeah.
motion? So we can't make a
Yeah,
motion?
we are. We are
So-
still in the public
So we're
hearing.
still listening.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at this
Boom.
point.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and we will have discussion after the, well, we can have discussion before the motion.
Right.
Go ahead,
I would
Commissioner.
hope so.
Well-
If you,
Typically, you'd have a motion, well,
You have the
Robert's
motion.
rules, you'd have a motion and then discussion.
Commissioner Rogers has something he wants to say. and
I want
Please,
to make
sir.
a motion, how's that? And I move that we defer this for 1 month, because I'd like to hear from Ms. Alarcon. If you look in your packet, I wrote a letter to her, pointing out that this commission, since I've been on it, approved every single thing that the Cooper administration asked for that had to do with this RFP and the contract and the choice of vendors and everything else. And during that entire time, it included a minimum of 250 e-bikes for bike share, which other cities have 500, 1,000, 1,200 and more. And as far as I know, that it's operating well in places like Denver. There's also a letter in there from David Kleinfelter, former councilman whose daughter lives in Denver. And he points out, you know, it's a pretty, as far as he knows, a well-working process. Obviously, I was hopeful, maybe the only one on the commission, that this would occur, and it hasn't because the department basically put a moratorium on it themselves. This was supposed to begin operating at the same time the scooters did, and it didn't. So, quite frankly, I appreciate that she asked for a moratorium that she had already established, and I'm not blaming Ms. Alarcon. She wasn't here for most of that, or any of it. And obviously, I don't like this. I'm upset by it. I would like to hear from her. But what I would like, and I'd propose it to her if she was here, and I'll tell Mr. Fields, I would like her to sit down with some of us that are actually people who have expertise in this kind of thing in Nashville, who aren't lobbyists, and maybe work out some way to initiate this. Maybe not with, 250 all at the beginning and not spread all over town. And, we geofence the scooters. We could keep them out of downtown if that's the problem. But I'd like a discussion of all of that before we just make a decision. So my motion is to defer it till the next meeting. And I would like an opportunity, and I think some other people would too, to sit down and talk to her about this. So
Right.
it's what I'm asking the commission to do.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there
I'll
a
second
second?
that motion.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion?
As a point of
Mr.
order,
Fields.
just from a discussion standpoint, we do have an Assistant Director of Public Works, Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure present. If the commission has any questions beyond what I have, I'm able to answer.
Move to amend the motion. You got it spot on, exactly what I was gonna say. I'd like to add a request that the director, either in advance or during the meeting, give us a full presentation on the Connect Downtown study. So there've been a lot of different places where she's talked about and where the department's talked about, we're gonna stop doing this. Nashville's got a different way of business. And she has some ideas that I think she'd probably like to share with us in the community. So I'd love to have a presentation. Maybe you can give us an advanced copy of what we've hired this consultant or these consultants.
Well, the NDOT manager for the study is present today, can also provide, if there, in
In
terms
the interest of time today.
I understand.
Given the length of meeting. So my amendment to your motion, which I was gonna ask for a 30-day deferral, is that we include a presentation at the next meeting or in advance on the Connect Downtown study.
That's a friendly amendment.
All right. We have a motion. There was a second on the original motion. Is there a second to the amended motion?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And Mr. Fields, will you be able to communicate the request for a presentation on the study?
Can you restate the motion, please?
The motion was to defer the implementation.
Voting on the request, yeah.
To defer the request for 30 days until such time as the director can provide the TLC a presentation on the Connect Downtown study and talk with us more about why she's asking for such a long deferral. So we've, instead of, agreeing to what she's asked for, which is 60 days following the completion of the study, we'd like to see the study and hear why she wants such a long deferral.
The bottom line is that the next meeting of the Transportation License Commission, this matter will be aired out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my request included a meeting with her, with myself, I guess, and some other people who would like to discuss why she's asking for this. And that's just a personal request. Obviously, she can ignore it, but I'd appreciate it if she'd be willing to sit down and talk to us. And that can include any other stakeholders, including, the companies or anyone else.
Commissioner Rogers, I don't think we can put that latter part about the request. That's part of the motion. It's already been said and heard.
You have to leave.
But
For
I
the
can't-
record.
Yeah. All right. Ms. Fields, does that bring that particular matter to an end today?
We will watch Channel 3 and make sure we have the motion exactly correct, but I think I understand the basic elements.
Nothing like a recording. All right, I'm going to reopen the public hearing about the entertainment transportation vehicles, but I'm going to make a couple observations and comments first. We have received 40 to 50 different written comments about this matter that's on for a public hearing today. The commissioners have received those. They've been, and we have them in our packets and available to us. I have also got, I think now, 42 people who would like to speak publicly today about the matter. I am going to set a timer because we do have a limited amount of time, and I have put the sergeant in arms, that's Commissioner Carr, who's going to be running that timer. I will hold you to the 2 minutes. I hate to be such a tyrant about this, but in the interest of everyone getting an opportunity to be heard today, I'm going to hold it to 2 minutes. Please respect that. Use your time wisely. Think about what you're really going to say. And if you're with a couple groups of organizations, see if you can get one spokesman to speak instead of several people coming up. We will not have duplication of comments today. If you begin to duplicate something we've heard or that you have submitted in writing, I will cut you off so that we can move on and so that everybody can be heard with fresh, clear input today. I hope that everyone will respect that. I also want to bring to everyone's attention that today is not about whether entertainment transportation vehicles belong on the streets of Nashville or not. As you heard from Councilman Parker, the state used to regulate those vehicles. The state has now delegated the regulation of those vehicles, fortunately, to the local municipalities to set up rules, regulations, and make decisions about them. Our Metro Council has delegated to this commission the responsibility to come up with rules to regulate the entertainment transportation vehicles. We are here today to hear comment about the rules that have been put on the public, have been made available to the public through the Transportation Licensing Commission staff, and any suggestions from commissioners and from the public about those rules. But we are here to discuss the proposed rules, not public policies about whether they belong on the road or not. That, and whether they belong on the road or how many belong on the road, will be discussed in the May Transportation Licensing Commission meeting. Our obligation today is to review the rules, so please tailor your comments to address the rules. Thank you for listening. All right, now, I also recognize that we have a large crowd of folks. We're kind of on the tail end, I hope, of the COVID pandemic. But feel free if you want to, I don't see anybody with a mask on, but if you wanted to wear a mask, don't be shy. I don't want to create a supernova pandemic exposure here today. I'll also notice that Teresa Constanza is not with us because she is tested positive with COVID. We wish her a speedy recovery, and we welcome Tara Ladd sitting up beside Mr. Fields today to advise us from Metro Legal. All right, Mr. Fields.
And we have one council.
And we have a council person here today, Tom Cash. Traditionally, we take elected representatives at the beginning of the public hearing. And so, Councilman Cash, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. I appreciate the recognition, and we'll try to be brief. I really appreciate the staff working on these rules.
Mr. Carr, we're going to hold everybody to 2 minutes today.
Excuse me. I was like, that was a fast 2 minutes. Thanks. I'm Tom Cash. I represent the 18th District, which is like West End to 12th Avenue, includes 21st, Vanderbilt, Belmont areas. I appreciate the hard work this staff has done on the rules that you've come up with to consider, that we council members asked you to look into. And I think, for this to work, for this business model to work, there are going to have to be rules. We've got in our city both land use rules about where it's appropriate for businesses, and in some cases certain types of businesses to operate. We've also got rules for how folks behave on the roadway. So it is essential that for this business model to work, that there are rules, and both of those kinds of rules and laws need to be considered. I think the rules are good. I think there's a lot of details, a lot of places. I think there are some elements of it that, like the GPS, that help self-regulate and make it easy using technology. We're in the 21st century, so that's great. We're using technology to help see what's going on and monitor. I think my constituents are concerned about, there's a part in the rules that talk about operations, and those, it is vague. And I think and I know in the future you all are going to, hopefully in the near future, look at like the number of permits that you're going to give, and the where the transportation vehicles are allowed, where the party vehicles are allowed. They want them out of residential neighborhoods. And you also, I know you also have to make sure that you, with the routes that you come up with, you have to also look at the number that are going to be on the road, so they're not overwhelming our road system. Thank you.
And thank you very much for timing that within 2 minutes.
Thank you.
You know,
All right, thank you, sir.
as a point of personal privilege, I've worked with Councilman Cash and when he was president of neighborhoods and so forth, and I've heard many presentations, and that was the most efficient presentation I've heard him give. And I'm proud of it. That was a very efficient presentation.
I also want to mention to the public that today we're about the rules. There will be hearings before this commission about zoning and setting various different things regarding the number of vehicles, if any, that go on the road. So if that helps to tailor some of the comments today to the proposed rules that are before us, we'll start with the, also, I'm putting an end to any more written requests to speak. We have 42 people. That is it. Do not come up here with another written request. It will be denied. So I've always wanted to be able to say denied. But. All right. First one I had that came in that's in the packet I have is Nicholas Lyon. And also, do me a favor when you step up there, please introduce yourself. And Mr. Carr.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How we doing? Nick Lyon with Hell on Wheels. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I'm kicking things off. No pressure on me, huh? So I just wanted to take this time to be present. Obviously, this whole situation with party tours and residents, has been acrimonious at times. Ultimately, at Hell on Wheels, we party with a purpose. We give back to wounded veterans. We've always tried to operate thoughtfully and respectfully to the city. Nashville's an incredible city. We love it. Safety is paramount to what we do, and this time of year with the enclosures, it's getting a little dicey with safety. The greenhouse effect is real, and it gets about 15 to 20 degrees hotter in the back of these vehicles when we're going down the road. So in order for me to follow the rules and regulations that are set forth, I have to be fully enclosed, which I am. That being said, even with air conditioners and air movers running at full blast, on these weekends it's getting up to 85, 90 degrees in the back of the vehicle. So that's a major issue. I have a lot of notes. A lot of it is, I feel like I'm having to defend myself, honestly. This is my livelihood. We employ, several veterans of the Marine Corps, and we've always tried to make impactful good in the community. And I feel like I'm sure a lot of us party tour operators in the room just feel villainized. I mean, we're literally going up against a PR firm and like lobbyists. It's kind of intimidating. So ultimately, safety's paramount. I've always tried to operate like we've been regulated this whole time. We're only ever on Broadway and up the Mumperdon. So the corridor, the only thing that really sticks out to me is the 500 feet with the school. With Hume Fog there, what does that mean? Is that when kids are in school, is it 24/7? I don't know what that means, and 500 feet is pretty far. That's like middle of Bridgetown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Next person is Paris McKinney, Jr.
Good evening, everyone. I'm with the Extreme Party Nashville and the Nashville Shuttle. I think keeping the vehicles enclosed, it's been keeping the sound down, and not that many complaints have been going through about the sounds have been with the vehicles going around town. The heat is getting, pretty real. I think we can maybe open up some of the windows, or if you have them, but not fully close them all up. I'm a little nervous. But in the last 2 months, how has the sound been with the vehicles? Have y'all heard anything? You know, has the noise been down some? I think they have. If we open it back up all the way, then we're gonna be back before the board to say, you gotta close back up again. And we done modified a lot of these vehicles to be in compliance of what y'all have put forward to us. So, a lot of, do y'all have proof that because the other business had moved out of here because of the transportation? We are a slow moving vehicle. And if y'all come up with some type of a route or something where we can, you know, continue working down through Broadway and let the slower traffic get past us where we won't be clogging everything up, I think it'll be better for us. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, sir. All right, Baylor Swindell.
I was going to try to take a pass, but I guess if I'm third, nothing's been covered, unfortunately. But I'm in your inboxes, so I'll keep it brief, hopefully under 2 minutes. Baylor Bone Swindle, work with Honky Tonk Party Express. As a lobbyist and lawyer, believe it or not, I believe my client should be seen and I should not be seen, but here I am. I've been in this with them for about 2.5 years. It's been a journey, mostly stressful and time consuming. I've only tried to fire them once. But I believe there ought to be a balance. And that's what I do best in my job, is trying to help people sit down and figure things out, and I think that can be done here. And I know there's a lot of complaints, and I know it's hard to do, and that's why I wasn't sure if I could stick it out. But I was like, even though it's hard to do, it's worth doing, and we can figure this out, and I appreciate you all doing that. One of the points, we're going to try to all hit on separate points. In my email, I think I addressed a little bit the school issue, which Paris touched on. Another issue, I've not heard that daycares were an issue, so there's several of them. I think that could be burdensome, but we also realized just in the last week that our route, you know, we have a depot on the outskirts of downtown. On our ingress and egress out of downtown, we actually pass schools on both directions and 2 different streets. So we'd like to be able to cut the music instead of rerouting. So that's one ask. But appreciate what you all do. My last ask would be, I would ask, you know, of course you've gotten authority, all the authority you need from the state and the council. You know, I would ask that you look at these rules with a scalpel and not a hammer. I know a lot of folks in this room probably want you to take a hammer to this issue, but let's address it with a scalpel first. You can always come back and tighten it up. I mean, this is new. We're gonna learn a lot as we go, and just appreciate time to speak. Thank you.
Seth, I think it's Lata.
Yes, sir. How you doing? I'm Seth Latta. I work for Trinity Security Corp, third-party vendor for security for Honky Tonk Party Express. They just asked me to speak about the safety and security of our depot. We have normally 2 to 3 officers there with either right to hire police officers or security officers there at all times to make sure all of the patrons being kept safe. Myself, I'm normally there on Fridays and Saturdays. I've had 17 years of experience in law enforcement. The biggest thing I get from all the patrons is they'd rather ride the buses because they're safer. They don't have to worry about being roofied. Don't have guys pressed against them. They just prefer to do that than be at bars downtown. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Christy Patterson.
Hello, I'm Christy Patterson with Tennessee Transport. My topic today is I just want to talk about the noise. I'll be the first to admit noise is a problem. We have a custom-built 25,000 watt stereo system on our vehicles. The reason why is because Broadway is loud. We constantly feel like we're competing to be heard. Is it a problem? Absolutely. Is there a way to fix it? Absolutely. There is a way that we can actually limit the voltage that comes from our amp. We can have that done by a professional radio system, by a professional what am I looking for? the
Sound
professional sound technician. We can have someone from the city put a tamper-proof sticker on it, much like you guys do for the cab and their meters. We can also install a data logger. There's ways to get around this. Keeping the enclosure on there is not gonna cause anything but someone getting hurt. We have 3 generators that we have put on our vehicles with 3 different AC units and 4 air movers. On a 70-degree day, it's 90 degrees inside there. When it's 90 outside, it's gonna be 120. So the only way to get around this is just to come up with a solution with the noise. If you dummy proof it and you make everybody do the same thing, then the problem is solved. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. All right, Rich Jambalowski. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, Rich J. Mikowski with THF Inc. I represent also the Nashville Tractor and Tennessee Transport. I look over the routes. I know that's been a topic already. I actually have, I don't know if you guys want these, but I actually came up with some proposed routes for you guys to look at because everybody's throwing up problems but not a lot of solutions.
Didn't we get those, Billy?
They're actually already included in the packet because you had to provide them for,
Okay.
but we'll certainly.
The biggest thing is to be successful with routes is I looked up on Google today. I only saw 2 schools that would be in any of the proposed zones and only 1 daycare that I saw, and that was over off of Church Street in a church. So I don't know, I don't think we have an issue with that. I think that's really something that we can work around, and just going through the city and going through the streets make it really easy to avoid those areas. I also think being successful is being proactive. The best thing about having routes is being able to have vehicles that can stay on the road and are easy to maintain. We have a full staff that takes care of all of our maintenance issues. Even like kind of compare it to NASCAR. If we have tires are going to go flat, things are going to happen. We have a crew that we can dispatch, get them off the road. That way they're not blocking any road for a long period of time. Right? No one wants to wait on a tow truck. That takes forever, especially with a vehicle of our size. The city has, if there's an accident on the interstate, they have jurisdiction over a tow truck that would be able to come move a wagon. I'm trying to get under 2 minutes. We also realized that over the past 3 years that tractors can, they're not made to be downtown, so we're downtown really just for aesthetics, and it looks amazing, but the tractors take a beating, and so to be proactive with that is we have allotted $80,000 a year to get new tractors every year. That way they're not breaking down and they're not causing any traffic issues. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Michael Winters.
How are you guys? Michael Winters. I own the Nashville Tractor, TN Transport Holdings, and a handful of other companies around here. Obviously, we try to break the topics up a little bit. As Rich was talking about, we replace our tractors every single year. It's a cost of about $80,000 a tractor. We found that's easier than trying to keep them repaired. Other couple topics here on the rules is the operational zone times. Most of us in the room would probably like to see midnight versus 11. For the simple reason, if simply that 1 hour on my operation, I lose 624 tours a year, which is $1.1 million by shaving off 1 hour. That 1 hour means a lot to me. I'd like to see it be midnight. What that allows us to do is have a 10 o'clock tour that ends at midnight. If we go back to 11 o'clock, now I'm shaving back to 9 o'clock, it's literally 624 tours a year. And I don't see very candidly it makes a lot of difference from 11 to 12. 4 to 6 time is going to be part of the rulemaking as well. Your traffic study, which Billy can provide you copies of, back from 2018, put the golf carts back on the road from 4 to 6 because they operated at a certain speed. 2016, they banned multiple vehicles from 4 to 6. Golf carts were one of them. In 18, the traffic study was redone. The golf carts were put back on because they operated at above the average speed of downtown, which Billy can figure this out by looking at his traffic study. But I think it was 18 miles an hour was the average downtown speed at that time. The tractors operate from the factory at 25 miles an hour. I have sent, I think, factory specs as well as videos to Billy that show these tractors run 25 miles an hour. So the 4 to 6 is a big deal for us. Once again, you can figure that hour at the end of the night costs us a lot of money. Ban me from 4 to 6, that gets real expensive, mostly in the middle of the day, because now I've got to figure out what to do with staffing on both sides. We talk about safety. These are the IDs of all the people that we confiscated that were drunk that showed up to our tours that are fake IDs. These people drank at bars all over downtown Nashville and tried to get on our vehicles. We took the IDs from them. We are not the drinking problem. Many times we're the resolution. Enclosures, 100% agree it's too hot. And then, sorry, one more point here. Oh, grace period, something to think about, my time's up. Once you apply permits, you do not have a current policy for grace period to allow individuals like myself to go get a BYOB permit. We're technically illegal next day.
Mr. Winters, your face is familiar. What were you up here on before?
Cruising golf carts, I've been here since 14.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Ross. Ms. Ross, you have a great smile.
Why, thank you. I am here today. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm Jennifer Ross. I work for Honky Tonk Party Express. I'm a driver, and my job is safety. And that's what we do. When we're on the roads, we're making sure that no one is getting hurt. We're checking our mirrors and everything for scooters and everything that's going by, the Ubers that are going by. We watch for emergency vehicles, and when they come, we turn the music down. If our bartender didn't hear it, we turn it down. And we make sure we know where they're going so we can get out of their way. I used to work on Fort Campbell as a driver at a before and after school program for 13 years. Safety is my job. That is what I do. And my record shows it, our company record shows it. We don't have any, of course we have accidents, but there is no deadly accidents. There's nobody's going to the hospital, but somebody will scrape up against a bus or something like that. There is nothing that is harmful. We are in the service of protecting the people. We know that downtown can be a little congested, it can be a little headachy, but we are there. We are professional drivers, and we are going to, we are in compliance to everything that you've asked for. Things like the enclosure is unsafe because of the heat. The heat is a very big deal. All we have are fans, we don't have the AC, things like that. So we're just asking if we could maybe, remove the sides or something like that, even just for the drivers and for our customers. We ask you to just hear us out. And also on the time frame of the 4 to 6, that's going to be a very big deal on both ends as far as scheduling and congestion, because everybody's going to be trying to get all their tours in either before or after, so it's going to cause a bigger issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Josh Feltz. Well, Honky Tonk's got a lot of people. I asked you all to kind of have one spokesperson.
Thank you all for hearing us out today. My name is Josh Feltz, sound and lighting engineer for Honky Tonk Party Express. Been with them for 8 years, since day one. I want to touch on sound and sound only. What we as a company have begun implementing is a master volume control and a tamper-proof system. We take decibel readings inside our bus as well as 50 feet outside of our buses. In doing that, we're allowed to tailor the sound to a more suitable level, and then we lock those volume levels so no matter who has access to the volume knob, so to speak, they never exceed a certain overall noise level. Someone else had touched on possibly having tamper-proof seals. We're all about that. And, sound is a big complaint. We can help control that. I've been doing this for 17 years as a career. I'm MECP certified. This is my life. Honky Tonk is on board with sound control, so to speak. We've spent the last 2 years trying to do this, control it. We've redesigned, re-engineered our audio systems to keep the sound inside of our buses. That's our goal. Let's work together on that. Thank you.
Mr. Feltz, I
Yes.
want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Can Honky Tonk today comply with the noise ordinance of Metro Nashville?
Yes.
Thank you.
More questions?
Oh, yep, there's another commissioner has a question.
Can you advise where the decibel level has been set for the last month or year?
Inside of our bus, it's 109 decibels is our cap. If you move 50 feet outside of our bus, and on a 360-degree radius, it usually drops to around 102 to 104.
So that's not in compliance with the current sound ordinance, which is 85 decibels at 50 feet? So you've not been complying because you're at 102
Is that
50
an
feet away?
entertainment district thing or just an overall metro?
That's an
thing?
overall Metro Nashville
Okay,
code
then no.
requirement.
But at 85 decibels, our bus is idle at 86, just out of the factory. That's just the noise of a diesel
Yeah.
engine.
Yeah.
So, for a comparative reading.
Yeah, there's not a, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks from the legal team, there's not a specific additional noise that's allowed on Broadway. As an example, it is the entertainment district.
Right.
There's not a noise cap on live music, but there's a cap on Broadway on DJ and amplified music. But if you're just driving down the street, my understanding of Metro's existing regulations is you're capped at 85 decibels, 50 feet away.
Oh,
Is that right or wrong?
I think it's confusing. I think there are some provisions of the Metro Code that talk about 85 and talk about 70, but it's in the context of a fixed building. So you talk about the honky tonks, like a building that's fixed in the ground can only be this many decibels, right? And so then you have a different sort of experience here because you have a moving vehicle. And so I was asked this question before. The Metro Code has a section that concerns moving motor vehicle noise. So I believe this would actually fall under motor vehicle noise. And in that section, it basically says that whatever you're playing in your car, I'm paraphrasing, shouldn't be heard from 50 feet.
Shouldn't be heard at all.
So then, in my response to a question that I received, I said, I don't know what decibel it would
Right.
be from 50 feet. And I heard what he said, which made me realize maybe it doesn't go down that much, because he said he had it at 100 and something, and then he went 50 feet and it's still 100 and something.
Right. Like OSHA and the World Health Organization start to talk about hearing loss over 70 decibels, right?
So basically, the rule is that from 50 feet, you should not be hearing what is in someone else's moving vehicle.
Does the rule say audible, I guess, clearly
Yeah.
audible?
Plainly audible.
Yeah. Because you're always going to have ambient and background noise.
Totally.
When we're on Broadway, everybody's competing for everybody as far as sound goes. You know, if we were at an 85 decibel level at 50 feet away, we would be able to just turn our music off and listen to the live band on Broadway at that point. Nashville is Music City. Let's enjoy this music.
And there was a robust discussion about that with the noise ordinance, that we are Music City, which is
Right.
playing, not
Right.
pre-recorded music.
Right. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Phelps.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, Patrick Kludek?
Close enough.
All right, well,
You can let us know.
Yeah.
go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Well, my name is Patrick Kludak. I'm the owner, one of the owners of Upstage Party Bus. My lovely wife, Katie, is the other owner. We have basically put all of our eggs in one basket, and here we are. This is what we do for a living. I used to bartend, or she used to bartend for a living, and I have owned limo transportation for quite some time, ever since 2003, in fact. My topic of conversation for today is going to be the enclosures, the sound, and weather and railings. First off, so the sound decibels, we have a lovely daughter. She is 16 months old. I have a TV on one side of my house, and then all the way at the other side is the front door. From that TV to the front door is 50 feet. It's actually 47. The other day, somebody went ahead and rang my doorbell. I walked over to the door, I answered the door, and lo and behold, I was able to tell just how many baby sharks were going on the thing. I mean, literally the number of the day was 7. And anybody who knows kids know everything that I'm talking about. The kid show was something that I was able to hear from 50 feet away, clear as day. Now, if we were to add 30 people into that whole entire mix, and you take in consideration everybody wants to hear the same music that are on our party buses, that would make it that we would have to raise that volume up a little bit. I'm asking that the sound ordinance is thought about extremely and not limited to 50 feet. And the reason for that is just so that way the people could go ahead and enjoy their time on the bus. And I'm not trying to let you hear it in your office. I'm not trying to let you guys hear it in your offices. I'm not trying to go past daycare. I'm trying to go ahead and be the provider as a father that I can be to my kids. I've got a fantastic kid, excuse me, and I got 2 dogs. But anyhow, other than that, let's talk about railings. So let's say there's a railing right here at 42 inches, correct? And let's say the passengers can't get past this point. That railing really does not need to be that high. So if you're like this and you go forward a bit, you're now at a different level. So I'd like for that to be in consideration, that if nobody could reach this handrail, and you've got 6 inches that come out basically to here, and you're asking for 48 inches, and you take away the 6, that should be 42. Other than that, let's go ahead and talk about the weather. There was some...
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're up to 2 minutes.
Sure thing.
Thank you, sir. All right, Wade Shoemaker.
Hi, I'm Wade Shoemaker, and I'm with the Music City Party Fire Engine. I'm the fire engine you see running around out there. Is there any way I can ask a question? Can I get a clarification from you, Billy, on the regulations on the enclosed or not enclosed? Because I just got the new rules that mentions unenclosed and says as long as you follow the rules, it sounds like you're good to go. But we're still harping on that, which is obviously a huge deal for everyone. So can we get a clarification? Are we allowed to be unenclosed at this point or not?
Shall I?
Sure.
When the Metro Council passed the ordinance, it gave the commission the authority to do what we're doing today. Those definitions were removed from the ordinance. So what I have encouraged people to do is follow the same rules that the council had. That's part of what the commission is going to do. If you look at the proposed rules, we basically have taken intact the ordinance language and removed them over to the rules. So the goal is for the commission then to have the opportunity to make decisions about, is it going to be enclosed, is it not going to be enclosed, and do we like these definitions and the materials if it is enclosed, and so forth. So the rule will be in effect when the commission passes a rule.
But at this point, it's still up in the air.
My belief, it's up in the air, but the sound ordinance is in effect.
Right.
Bear in mind,
Which
that
I don't
is
have a
enforceable
problem
today.
with the sound ordinance, and that's me too. I think some of it's being overcomplicated. If we just follow the ordinances that are out there, well, which sounds like some of them, it's kind of, we need a clarification on. But just do that, open the vehicles back up where people can get air and not have heat stroke out there. I'd highly recommend that, and that's a huge issue with everybody else. The other thing I like to address real quick is traffic. We are not the traffic problem. Quick math. I went to Metro Public Schools, learned math. If there's a busy day and there's 5,000 vehicles on the road, which I'm guessing at a big event that's way under, I think when we had the last meeting, it was mentioned maybe there was 70 party vehicles on the road. That's less, we're 1% of the traffic, 1%. And we go the speed of the traffic. So the traffic issue to me is non-existent. I live in Nashville downtown, and it's just something else to come back at us with and say, you're an issue, you're a problem. Just like the gentleman earlier, we feel attacked a lot of times. And we're just trying to survive, make a living, provide safe enjoyment, something to do for the people in Nashville or the tourists. I get locals, I get people from all over. My time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Austin. Yeah, it's R-E-D-E-R.
I assume that's any other Austin?
Okay. Mr. Rader, please introduce yourself and tell us what you want to say today.
Okay, so I am Austin Rader. I've been with Honky Tonk Party Express for 3 years. I'm one of the, the chaperones, okay? And I just want to speak on the number of chaperones that is proposed. I think 2 is too many. If you heard my driver, Jen, she's always on the bus with me, and there's always me. So already we have 2 people that are keeping an eye on the guests. Average group size is going to be about 9 to 13. Maximum capacity is 30. And after 3 years and probably 1,500 tours that I've done, it's easy to maintain that number of people for 2 hours at a time. 30 is the most that I've ever had. If things really go south, again, my driver is there to step in and pull the bus over or cut the music, whatever needs to happen. But 2 is too much. You're going to have one guy standing around. Most of these buses are not fitted to have that many people in the bar area. It's going to cut in on money, and we're already short-staffed all around Nashville. That means we have to schedule twice as many people to have that, and it just doesn't logically make sense from my stance to have 2 people on that bus when one man is very capable of doing that job, as long as he's trained and trusted to do that job properly. It doesn't matter if you have 2 people up there and neither one of them know how to do it, you're still going to run into safety issues. But Yeah, that's all. Yeah, thank you.
Could I ask the gentleman a question?
Yes.
You said, so you've got a driver and a chaperone.
Yeah.
Do you have a bartender?
The chaperone is the bartender, the DJ, bouncer, photographer, whatever else they need on that bus.
So that person
A lot
is
of time.
pretty occupied with other
Not really.
tasks.
Not, because we use Spotify, so as long as they send me a playlist or I build a queue ahead of time, I don't have to touch the phone for the music. Pouring drinks for 9 people, I can get that done in 2 minutes flat, easy. So I've got a lot of time then to keep an eye on the guests and make sure that no one's breaking the rules, standing on the cup holders, or doing anything else that you're not supposed to do in
So
any
the
bar.
capacity for all your buses is 9?
Maximum capacity is 30. Average group size, I'm saying, like, is 9, 13 people, but maximum capacity is 30.
So you want one driver and one bartender for 30 people?
Yes. After 3 years and about 10,000 people, I found that it can be done, and very safely. I've never filled out an injury report. I've never had to call the cops or anything like that, whereas when I worked at Red Door East, that happened every week, you know, and they had 5 people on staff there.
Thank you, Mr. Rader.
Thank you.
Forrest Broyles. Honky tonk again.
Hello, thank you for what you do, appreciate it. Met with several of you. I want to talk about the peak hours and the impact that would have on our business. It's pretty massive. Fridays are a super busy day for us, and on Fridays, that would cut out 31% of our business not being able to operate from 4 to 6. And it's way more complicated than you may initially think, just looking at a 2-hour period. You know, we can't have a tour that leaves at 2:30, because that tour would get back at 4:30. So it's really a 4-hour block that we can't be operating and having our tours go out. It'll also be a tremendous challenge with our staff, not being able to work during these hours. And another thing is corporate events are our largest growing segment of our business. And we're scheduled and projected to do 110 corporate bookings this year. And the corporates, what we found is they're using our service for shuttles instead of having to rent maybe 6 or 7, 8 big tour buses to transport their people. They use our buses to transport their people. And so a lot of those are happening during those peak hours. So we would like to propose alternative routes with certain streets that we can and can't go on and during these times. And I'd like to start with this and then make adjustments as possible, as needed. Last thing is about the 11 p.m. curfew. We would like to ask that we can operate on Friday and Saturdays until midnight. With how congested downtown traffic is because of Broadway being closed on the weekends, we start heading back and leaving the core at about 11:15 to make it back to our depot where we drop our guests off. So that ride back should take about 15 minutes. Because of how congested downtown is with Broadway being closed, it takes about 40 minutes now. Thank you so much. I appreciate your consideration of all of these things. Thank you.
Before you leave, can you advise your route home? How do you get back to your depot?
I can't speak to that. I'm the silent partner in my business, so I'm not the one making it. But my business partner can. Grant, you want to take that?
Grant, are you going to be speaking in a minute?
He's asking our route back home.
Ms. Swindell said that you go by schools and daycares.
Yeah, so we're going on Lafayette.
Yeah, the route. Introduce yourself first. And
My
then-
name's Grant Rosenblatt.
Okay.
Yeah, we go by Lafayette. There's a school that's where our depot is stored, and also coming up 2nd Avenue. Because we're down in Wedgwood, Houston area.
So you're going to come 8th Avenue to Lafayette?
The way that we are still coming up is going into Hart, going up 2nd Avenue to Lafayette, making a left onto Lafayette is what was in our packet, to 8th Avenue.
So that's in what you emailed?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And listen, I appreciate Honky Tonk dividing up the topics. Thank you. All right, Jared Howe, or House, Jared House.
Good evening, good evening. My name is Jared House. I'm the manager for Upstage Party Bus. And I just want to speak a little bit about enforcement. When I was a police officer, if I pulled someone over for a moving violation, I would walk up to the car, introduce myself and tell them the reason why I pulled them over. On Friday, April the 15th, as I crossed Broadway to 2nd Avenue, I saw a gentleman standing in front of my bus with a flashlight pointing to the side. So I pulled over, stopped, rolled down the window. The gentleman asked me to step out of the vehicle, come around to the sidewalk. Asked him what's going on, what's the problem. His reply, and I quote, is, "I regulate you." That's unacceptable. If you don't have a reason to stop a vehicle, then you cannot stop a moving vehicle. It's called probable cause. So we need to have something in place to make sure that this type of situation doesn't keep happening. Another thing is, the gentleman also decided to tell me, well, or threaten me and say, well, I'm going to call Billy Fields and you're not going to get your permit. Unacceptable. I don't want to see, my father is a retired Metro police officer. I've been a police officer in 3 different departments. I don't have a problem with rules or regulations. I believe in the law. But I think we need to make sure that we have things in place that the people know the law and they also abide by the law. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. House. Lisa LeClaire?
Good afternoon, all. Thank you for being here and thank you for taking our comments. I will keep this brief. I'm speaking today. My name is Lisa LeClaire. I'll get that all out. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Greater Nashville Hospitality Association. Some of our members are here today, and I just want to acknowledge them and thank them for taking time to be here. I've sent a letter, and I think that is in your packet. Billy has confirmed that. And based on the comments that we're hearing from our member companies, I just want to share that we are in favor of regulations, and mostly regulations related to noise and sound, locations of pickup and drop-off. We have, some of our members have mentioned that they get picked up or dropped off at the location and then they go in and use the restroom facilities and oftentimes leave a mess and then our businesses have to pick up after that. We are also in favor of routes rules, as have all been mentioned here today. We want Nashville to be a really fun place and continue to be a really fun place to come. We just want to make sure that it's safe and honors both our local residents and our guests and visitors. Thank you.
And I have a disclosure here, or a disclaimer. Ms. LeClaire used to be my neighbor and is good friends with my wife, so.
Nice to see you, Pat.
Likewise. All right. Will Tucker. Have it noted that Ms. LeClaire did stay under 2 minutes, so there was no favoritism there.
Good afternoon. Will Tucker. I own the Tucker Agency, an insurance agency here in town that specializes in specialty auto, hospitality, passenger transport, etc. We're in 30-plus states and insure probably thousands of vehicles, 30 to 50 plus transportainment-related companies. And I just want to make sure that the council is consulting an insurance professional as you're considering the limits that you're forcing on the transportainment industry. I think that insurance limits are needed, but I think it's important that you guys know what's happening in the industry and the ability of these guys to actually get insurance and what it's going to cost. And so I want to make sure that I'm available to you, but even if you don't use me, please be sure that you're speaking with an insurance professional that knows transportainment. That's a big part of it. There's not very many companies that can insure these guys. There's probably less than 10 insurance companies in the country that will even talk to them and consider it. So it's important that you're talking to an agent that knows the industry and knows what it takes to insure them. Also, I want to say that, you know, we insure 30 to 50 companies, as I mentioned, 30 plus states, the largest cities in the country. I am yet to have a catastrophic loss. So I want you guys to understand and know that at least all of my customers are operating very safely, and I think they should be applauded for that. And you guys need to take that in consideration when you're thinking about the limits. Is there a study that's been done on losses that have happened? Has there even been $1 million loss in Nashville? I'm not aware of one. I haven't read about one, and I certainly haven't had one in our agency. So all that to say, I'm here for the council. If you have any questions, I'd love to be a part of the process and just make sure that everything's done fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
I just want to put one quick thing on the record. In his statement, he said that we are forcing rules on people. I just want you guys, we're not forcing any rules, we're just setting them. So they only get forced when what when what is being set is not being abided by. That just kind of struck me a little weird to say we were forcing rules on companies. That's it. I just wanted that on the record.
Could I ask Mr. Fields a question?
Yeah, of course.
We have risk, I say we, Metro has risk managers, correct?
Yes, sir.
In Metro Legal, I think. Were they involved in this at all? Did you utilize their
Yes, sir.
expertise?
We had multiple conversations and you know, and spoke to Mr. Tucker, have information from Mr. Tucker. You know, when this began, in this particular case, and this is probably more appropriate for a later conversation, but I'm happy to answer it. When we initially started this, it was a $5 million limit for everyone. We started studying and looking, and we determined that if we could get certain things as a part of the regulation, certain safety features in the vehicles, additional people on the bus to maintain control, we would be able to we would be able to protect the city with maybe at a lower rate, because we were putting in built-in safety features, including barriers to doorways, rails that are appropriate rates. Then the building code is 42 to 48 inches. I chose, I'll take the credit because I get credit anyway. You know, I chose the 48 inches. The truth of the matter is the building code says 42 to 48, and that'll be something, when you get to that point, I'd want to speak with you about. But in conversations with our insurance manager for Metropolitan Government, he felt reasonably comfortable if we had all the safety features in place, if we were to limit them and where they can go with passengers on it, then these rates probably would be sufficient. Can everybody get them? What he had described to me, some are going to be able to get them, some of them can't. It's going to be depending on their driving record, their company's record, how long they've been in the business. Some may not be able to get even low rates because they haven't been in business long enough. But I'm not the insurance professional, and certainly as the commission goes forward, if you want additional information, we'll provide that wherever it needs to come from, whether it's the state commissioner's office or another.
I just wanted on the record that you didn't just make it up.
Mr. Commissioner, I did not just make it up.
All right, Nathan Spears.
Hey guys, thank y'all for being here today. I'm Nathan Spears with South Point Risk Advisors, and I guess it's convenient that I should come immediately after Mr. Tucker there. I personally don't really have a problem with the liability limits. I think they're fair if you compare it to what we're regulating otherwise. The only arbitrary thing I might suggest is the 1.5 mil auto liability limit for operators that have fewer than 16 passengers, when we only allow a 1 mil limit for limo operators that would have fewer than 15 passengers. So I find that to be somewhat inconsistent. The 3 mil limit, if I'm not mistaken, the last MTA meeting I went to, I believe Metro City buses operate with a 3 mil auto liability limit, and perhaps that's where that figure has come from. No problem with that. That's for buses and so forth that have more than 15 passengers. One thing that I might suggest, however, is Mr. Tucker also spoke to this. I would say there are far fewer than 10 markets for this type of exposure, these type of operators. I too insure operators from coast to coast and have done so for 15 years, and some of you probably recognize me. I would humbly suggest that if and when these regulations do go into effect and are going to be enforced, in other words, what date the enforcement is supposed to start, please bear in mind that these operators are in the middle of an insurance policy term. In fact, they are in the middle of a contract with an insurance carrier. I think it would be to their disadvantage if we were to force them to get these coverages that perhaps some of them don't have right now if they are within 60 days of an upcoming insurance renewal, if they don't already have those coverage. I would humbly submit that perhaps you allow those people to comply at their next renewal. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So you're talking about a grace period somewhat?
Yes, sir.
If their renewal date is within a reasonably short period of time?
Yes, sir. And in fact, I think there's precedence for that with the taxi cab industry, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you've spoke to us about that before.
Yes,
so
sir. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr.
Good to
Spears.
see you. Y'all have a beautiful day.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Yes.
question?
Yes.
Mr. Spears has been working with the commission since 2000 for sure, way back in the old days when we were trying to figure out how to best to do taxi cabs and wreckers, when that's all we did. A question, is there a state minimum for passenger vehicles above 15?
Yes, sir, I believe there is on, I want to say it's a creature statute. I want to say above 15 passengers, it is typically 5 mil. I'm not going to swear to that for the state of Tennessee because I've been focused on other states and whatever Metro requires typically.
I think
That's a common limit. 5 mil limit is a common limit in excess of 15.
It's certainly a federal limit when it comes to interstate buses and that sort of interstate passenger carriage.
You've done your homework, yes, sir.
I didn't just make it up.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris Sizemore. He did, didn't he? That's it. That's dangerous. You don't want to step in for him, huh? That's all right. All right. Brian Dill.
That was me. I'm going to move my time down.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dill. Ashley Thomason.
She had to leave.
Okay. Susan Pistoli. Pizzatoli.
Pizzatola. Susan Pizzatola with the Nashville Party Barge. You guys.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. So I told some people they know me.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I got a couple things. I know I got my 2 minutes real quick. I got to reiterate about the safety and the heat index. And I've got a question for you guys. Do you all happen to have a risk manager for that? You know, I'm retired military, and the heat was a big index when it came to safety, no matter what we did. These vehicles are the risk factors for the heat temperatures inside these closed vehicles is unbelievable. I'm asking the board today to consider allowing us to raise the front, back, or half of a side of a window, a panel, something. We are now putting customers in danger. My driver's in danger. And that, I think, is going to fall back on somebody, it has to, when we have a heat casualty. Secondly, back on what Councilman Parker mentioned earlier about the other side of the river, please take in consideration, my office is located on that side of the river, my shop. We utilize 5th Street when there's events at the Titan Stadium off of Davidson Street, like last week in the marathon. We can't get out, we have to use 5th Street. So if closing off the East Nashville side, just maybe past 5th Street forward is fine with me. I've just got to have 5th Street for emergency exit. Thirdly, under safety, under the 0.05.0 safety, paragraph H, you guys have a seating capacity of 15 to 20 shall have 1 member aboard, the right at the back. I think that should be revised. This is a suggestion. It should not be on seating capacity. It should be on the number of passengers. My vehicles all seat anywhere from 15 to 20, but my passengers might only be 7. I might have 8. Today I had 6. Tonight I have 7. Tomorrow morning, you know, it varies. I think it should not be varied on the number of passengers. If I have more than 15 passengers or 16 passengers, then, you know, we add somebody. But if it's less than 15 passengers, there's no need to have somebody on there. I've been operating 8 years.
Okay. Time's up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Grant Rosenblatt. Well, you are coming up.
I'm back. Grant Rosenblatt, Honky Tonk Party Express. I've been in business since 2016. I'm just going to cover a few topics that I had here. First, going back to the sound decibel reader with our guy Josh. We are pro getting our sound contained within the vehicles. We've talked to a few board members about how we can control that with decibel readings, having a lockbox so decibel or sound can't be turned up or down, no matter how much you turn the ride. Putting a security tape on there as well too, so we have these things amplified to a 50-foot distance that everyone can agree with the commission or the enforcement that we can have with that. So we are pro for that. Most bars downtown are getting about 106 decibel readings from 50 feet away. That is the reason why these vehicles have become an arms race, so to speak, in volume. And that is the reason, but we are willing to bring that down to bring everything together as a unit. Another topic that I wanted to bring up was our insurance. There are some people that are going to be at $3 million and some people that are going to be at 1.5, even if the seating capacity is the same or more. And what we're asking for, until the regulation catches up with the insurance or the insurance catches up with the regulation, that we all be on that same playing field, whether that means the $3 million comes down to a 1.5 or 2 million, just so that we're all equal in what we're all paying, no matter the equal or greater passenger count on that as well. And maybe stair step it up the next year. So this year we kind of go down, or we make it all kind of the same, then we can look at going up beyond that. Another issue that we take with is having one bartender back on the back. Our vehicles do hold up to 30 people. We typically do 25. Our average group size is actually about 12.5 to 18. We do have one bartender that's back there that was provided to us by our insurance. They said that is fine. As our bartender rater said, that we have not had any kind of accidents or claims on that, and Will Tucker also reiterating that fact. An alternative would be maybe a rear-facing camera, so we can monitor that as well too, so you get your second monitor. That doesn't have to be a second person on that vehicle as well. Also, having two bartenders makes drink serving faster, so we just want to slow it down with having one bartender. 2 minutes.
All right, Jennifer Flanagan. Say what? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, she's coming.
Oh, wait.
Microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Beth.
That's all right. Anyways, Jennifer Flanagan. I'm the owner of Experience Nashville, and I feel like we're pretty much in a different segment than everybody else. We are strictly a sightseeing tour. We only operate from the hours of 10 to 6. One of the things that we really focus on is wheelchair accessibility. That is a personal mission of mine to give more opportunities and more equality to our visitors that come. 80% of our population is over the 40 crowd. We pretty much follow the same tour line as the hop-on, hop-off buses. So for us, obviously, the most important thing when you're talking about is the route, but at the same time, we're a different business model. You know what I mean? We're not about music. We're 90% commentary. All those other things that, you know, that is an issue doesn't fit into ours already as what we self-regulate, I guess. And so I guess my ask is that you think about having a different category for people that are strictly sightseeing tour companies that, I mean, we give a historical tour, 12 miles through the city. It's going to be crucial for us to continue on our path. Like I said, the same path as the hop-on, hop-off buses in order for us to do business.
Tell me the name of your
Yeah, Experience Nashville.
Do you have a website?
We do. And I even brought brochures for everybody if you want one. I could totally hand them out to you. But yeah, so it's experiencenashville.com. And like I said, and so I guess the time thing, when people were talking about the 4 to 6, we only operate from 10 to 6. So if you take away one of our tours, that would be detrimental to us because we only do 4 tours a day.
Thank you, Ms. Flanagan.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question of our attorney? This is going to come up. Is her vehicle covered under the ordinance? I mean, that question came up to me, not in this specific one, about, for instance, I don't know how we define non-party bus, but is there?
There's basically.
Yeah, Commissioner
Do
Rogers,
more.
I was noting the same thing about when we were reviewing Nashville Bronco tours, and I just made a note, there seems to be a difference between a party entertainment transportation and a tour.
Right.
And I think Ms. Flanagan brought up a good point. her priority is commentary,
Right.
not entertainment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
yeah.
Again, I'd be happy to speak on an issue that I wanted to bring up after the public hearing, so whatever you want me to do. But on that would, well,
It just occurred to me, I'm sorry.
Oh, I
Yeah.
understand. In response, we've had conversations with the director of NDOT, Ms. Alarcon, and talk about the whole issue of sightseeing tourism as opposed to entertainment transportation. One of the things that we're going to be bringing back to you, in fact, Mr. Schlafer right now is doing research on other cities to determine what an entertainment, what a sightseeing vehicle might be in terms of what an industry might look like. So I would anticipate that we're going to be making some recommendations to you as we learn more about the idea of, when something is clearly entertainment, music, alcohol, dancing versus tour, shuttling services from place to place. You get off, you see the place, and you come back, or whether it's sightseeing where you're having a commentary about cultural issues and still seeing the site. So we do anticipate bringing an idea back to you that we would ask you to consider.
So we may have two ETs. We may have entertainment transportation and educational transportation.
Well, also it's important, the definition that the state has given to entertainment transportation.
Yeah.
It actually, and I can read it for you, but I'll just say that it includes, it says where the passengers hire the motor vehicle not only as a means of transportation, but also for some entertainment or social purpose. It includes, but it's not limited to, and then it goes on and says that. So I think entertainment or social purpose, arguably, this would fit into the state's initial definition.
You think, obviously we're debating or we're discussing something here. I wonder if cultural educational falls under social and
Entertainment?
entertainment.
I don't know.
In the conversations I've had with Metro Legal, and unfortunately, Ms. Ladd has been on many other subjects than what I've had to work with the last few months. I won't even talk about trash, will I?
Yeah.
We believe the state has given us the authority to regulate these kinds of vehicles, whether they're sightseeing, primarily entertainment, how we regulate them, I think, is open to debate, and being able to have actually sections, whether it's another section of this, or whether we go back to council and ask for a section, or we actually take back a whole new ordinance. I think the general idea, at least in my conversations at NDOT, would be a consideration of a separate section that would cover sightseeing, would cover touring, and that might actually affect some of the vehicles that are now covered under 674, which is the OPVH. So we've, as we work on one, we now have the next step on something else. So they have given us much to chew on and much to work on to try to figure out how to make this happen.
Well, Commissioner Rogers and Ms. Flanagan have given us another aspect of another facet of this to start looking at. So, all right, Commissioner Rogers, does that cover what we need?
Yes, yeah.
All right, Justin Frazier.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justin Frazier. I'm with Fortify Solutions. We're an insurance provider here in Middle Tennessee and have been in the business for a little over 25 years. When I was shot over the new proposals by my client, a couple of things came to mind that I'd really like to get some clarifications on. The first two are listing the Transportation Authority as an additional insured on the policy. An additional insured by definition means that you have a contractual obligation, you have a business arrangement, or some type of ongoing situation with the insured that requires you to hop on the policy with them. I'm trying to figure out exactly what that ongoing relationship is that requires this council to be listed as an additional insured with rights on the policy that you don't pay for, that you're requiring the clients to have. So, I'll give you a prime example. If I open a restaurant, the health department is not an additional insured on that policy. The Tennessee Department of Insurance Commerce is not an additional insured on my policy, even though I've been granted a license by that department. Second off, I'd like to really unpack the general liability requirements. This is an emerging market. I believe that the first gentleman spoke today, Councilman, said this is an emerging market, a total of 70 vehicles on the road. Insurance is built off of the law of large numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, 70 is not a large number. There are not 70 more in Franklin, there's not 70 more in Murfreesboro, there are 70 here. And because of this, the insurance industry does not have a product that is designed for this industry when it comes to general liability. Therefore, you are putting a burden on all of these businesses to operate with a product that does not really exist in its current state right now. On top of that, most companies, let's see here, there's also, let me get back to that. There's a cancellation clause that you're also asking for in this policy, that on policy forms, insurance companies file with the state of Tennessee and all states, their policy form, including their cancellation clauses. You're asking for something outside of that, which means the company is going to have to then file a new policy form in order to create this policy for 70 companies. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not going to happen. There is not enough premium in this micro industry to make sweeping policy changes to accommodate this small of a market share.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Frazier.
My time is up.
Yep. Will Cheek.
I want to thank the commission for attacking these rules. It's really good to see you doing this. I worked with the beer board putting together rules for the mobile beer permit, mobile BYOB. I think it's really helpful to have regulation in the industry. Had a few comments. I represent the drag bus. We really would like to see the ability to be able to have our windows down and consume alcohol in the buses. Not sure if noise is a concern. We're willing to abide by that. Insurance, I wanted to echo some of the concerns. The insurance that's actually out there in the marketplace gets extraordinarily expensive when you go from 1 to 2 million. I know that with bars, most of the bars that I represent carry about $1 million, and these are people that have a lot to lose, and they have an interest in buying more insurance, and they make a decision not to triple the amount that they're paying per year to go from 1 to 2 million. If the board could actually look at some actual amounts that coverage is offered for, that would be helpful. The $5 million number, for example, is for buses that go in interstate transportation. They won't insure a party bus driving around downtown Nashville. It's a different kind of insurance product. Talking about the schools, I think noise is a major concern, and if there's some other concern with the schools that make the board not want transportation entertainment to go by the schools, we'd like to hear it and see if there's another way we could address it. It really constrains the routes. 500 feet takes us down to 5th Avenue from Hume Fog. It takes us up to 10th. It takes us all the way over to Church Street. There's a daycare on Church. So it's really sort of boxes out a large area of downtown. If there's something else that we can do to address the concerns of the board, we'd be glad to. The last is the fee. $5,000 for a transportainment is a lot more than any of the other bodies that this group organizes. One other thing is, I think it would be important for the board to look at penalties. The beer board, for example, and beer boards across the state do this very well. You get the attention with a first fine of like $1,500. Then you hammer them with a fine that really costs a lot of money, $5,000 to $10,000. And from there you set for revocation, suspensions. If the board would consider doing that, I think that would really put some teeth in these laws. It would really give you guys enforcement authority that would make them effective. Thank you, and I'm sorry I ran over my time.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes, sir.
How are you? Thank you for coming today. I wanted to, I guess, ask a couple of questions. Yes, of the windows down, right? So this ordinance, or I guess the rules we're discussing today does talk about windows down, but how did your client prepare to, or plan to deal with the noise? Right, so I look at a lot of your colleagues, a lot of my colleagues, they complain about the noise.
Yeah,
and somebody else said, has the plexiglass helped? It's helped, right? It's not perfect, but it's helped.
So the drag bus doesn't need to be loud to be fun. And they're not competing, they're not advertising with the amount of noise. So for the drag bus, it's not a problem at all.
You think they would be able to maintain the Metro noise ordinance?
I believe so.
Yeah. The second thing you asked is about the schools. You know, one of the things that I've witnessed personally is both noise from maybe not the drag bus, but from other buses. But second, incredibly lewd behavior from patrons on the buses when children are dismissing from school. I don't know how to deal with that holistically with 150, 160 potential vehicles when a group of, intoxicated people go by and yell obscenities at children. It's incredibly inappropriate. And I don't think that the driver or the chaperone can necessarily stop that because it happens in an instant. But that child hears this. It's happened to family members of mine. I've seen it happen. I drive by Hume Fog every day on the way home from work. And we don't see a lot of these vehicles now in front of Hume Fog, but it did happen previously.
And I have not. And
So you asked the question.
Right.
I'm giving you an answer.
so what if the board set an hour? What if you couldn't go past the schools between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m.? So, I mean, something like that would give some flexibility.
I think my concern there is there are after-school activities, there are basketball games at night, there are other activities that happen, not just the school hours where
Right.
children would be present. So I think, saying, as long as you're not there between 7 and 5, you're okay. That's not necessarily the case. I think that's some things we have to consider.
And it happens with these vehicles is that I want to bring my children down to the 5th and Broadway, right? Like big new entertainment destination. But then you get a lewd vehicle a vehicle with lewd patrons going by. They're not in a bar, right, where it's harder. They're in the middle of the street where they're yelling obscenities at my children. I've got a problem with that. And I don't know how to.
Can we table this?
But he asked a question about schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chief.
But it's broader than schools.
Thank you for the dialogue. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, sir.
And I really appreciate you guys tackling the regulations.
Steve Burgess. Steve Burris? Okay.
My name's Steve Burris with Old Town Trolley Tours of Nashville. We addressed a little bit already with Jennifer and Experience Nashville, the need for something separate for tourism. We are asking that the TLC considers Old Town Trolley one of the 5 excluded transportation types as outlined in the ordinance. We don't need additional rules. We provide a 15-mile continuous loop shuttle around the city. We make 14 stops that include hotels, historic landmarks, shopping and dining areas, and other points of interest. The majority of our tour shuttle is not on Lower Broadway. We are a family-oriented and family-owned business that hosts guests of all ages. We have a strict no alcohol policy allowed on our vehicles. The ordinance states that the entertainment transportation does not include limousine, sedan, shuttle, taxi cab, or electric assist pedal carriage. Our operation falls squarely under the U.S. Census Bureau definition of shuttle. Shuttle service establishments generally provide travel on regular routes and on regular schedules between hotels, airports, or other destination points. This is exactly what we do.
Mr. Burris?
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're okay with the rules, you just, you want your business not to be under the rules.
Well, these particular rules,
Okay.
that is correct.
That's not up for today, all right?
It's part of the rules, and we want to
No,
make sure
no,
that it's
you're
very
You're
clear.
making an application that you're not under the
Okay.
rules, okay?
We actually had to put in an application, and that's why we're speaking today.
Okay. Go ahead, I didn't mean to.
Okay, no worries. We wanted to be sure that we had made the application in speaking with Mr. Fields, so that's why we are here today.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Louis, is it Lazare? Lazre? Okay, thank you. Andrew Arnold, or no, Andrea Arnold. My apologies. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I'm Andrea Arnold with the Convention and Visitors Corporation. I appreciate your leadership on this issue, and I particularly appreciate the attention to the concerns that we from the hospitality industry have communicated with this commission and others in the city for quite a while now. So thank you for your attention to detail on that. I particularly wanted just to show my appreciation in regard to our recent concerns that we've had as we've had conventions start to come back. I know I've shared a lot of those comments with you. I know our downtown streets feel full. but we're not back, we're not recovered, and conventions represent over 40% of our business. And those comments from those conventions that I've shared are extremely concerning to us, so we really appreciate this commission trying to get their arms around the safety issues. Specifically to address the regulations you proposed, I want to just commend everyone. We feel like this is a very reasonable start to a very long conversation. We just implore the commission and staff to please continue to look at this, and whatever we do, we start small and keep it simple. Out of respect for the MMPD and the commission that will have to enforce this. They've got, especially MMPD, have a lot going on downtown, so this helps, keeps it simple for them to be able to keep things enforced and safe. It also allows the downtown stakeholders, the multiple diverse downtown stakeholders, see how it goes and have input and adjust as we go. It's far easier to increase our operations than it is to bring it back down. Specifically in regards to the hours, we feel like that was a very reasonable suggestion, especially looking at how the different constituencies, particularly businesses, and the ingress and egress during business hours. That was appreciated. The last point we would make is to please consider keeping these enclosed. I know that there have been a lot of comments against that today, but we feel like a lot of the complaints we've heard stem from when the party leaves the bus and interacts with the street. We've all seen the infamous videos that have gone around of patrons passing alcohol and other substances with people on the street, the lewd behavior, interacting with people on the street. While enclosing a party bus does not solve all the problems, it certainly decreases the intensity of many of these issues. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Arnold.
thank you very much.
And you're absolutely correct. This is the start of a evolving, long conversation.
Thank you.
Jim Schmitz.
Thank you. Jim Schmitz. I've lived downtown for 7 years and have worked downtown for 15. The council members I noticed earlier today talked about, they do not represent the downtown district, but they talked about not wanting these vehicles and having the routes go outside of their neighborhoods. Well, I'm here to tell you downtown is a neighborhood. There are 15,000 people who've chosen to live downtown. Many of them before party buses started their business, as Grant said earlier, in 2016. There are 50,000 workers downtown. These buses have, the noise is the huge issue. We've heard about this all day today. These buses, people selected places to live and work downtown to be convenient to the entertainment that's downtown, but not to be in the middle of it. These buses are transporting loud, raucous behavior from downtown, from Lower Broadway into the rest of downtown, the corners of the neighborhoods. That is the issue, and that's something that we've got to bring under control. They interrupt classroom instruction, church services, business meetings during the day. They interrupt residents' peaceful home life and sleep at night. Frankly, the 11 o'clock number is still too late p.m. We are people trying to go to sleep and get to work the next day. The big issue here to me is with the noise is the enforcement of it. The noise ordinance from Metro has been in place for years and it is not being enforced. We've got to find a way to enforce that in order to get this under control. Sounds like there's a handful of operators here who are operating well. We've heard from just a handful though. My bigger concern, quite honestly, is those other operators that are out there that aren't here today, that aren't speaking up today, and may not have the resources to do the things that some of these folks are doing now in regards to noise and other things. But we need to be able to enforce the rules on noise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Britt DePriest. Joseph Nunzo. All right.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I'm from the Germantown neighborhood.
State your name, please.
Joseph Nuzzo.
Thank you.
1352 Roselle Parks. I've lived in Germantown now for close to 4 years. And what I'm up here for is to speak generally what that gentleman was speaking about with the routing of the buses. Currently, Germantown is growing in leaps and bounds. Got more traffic coming in every day. And we're trying to keep the routing of the buses out of Germantown, limited to James Robertson Parkway to Jefferson Street. Keep the buses within Bicentennial Park and that part of the neighborhoods. The streets are very narrow as it is right now. Getting 2 cars down one street is difficult. With a party bus, it just shuts down the street and create all kinds of hazardous situations. The smaller vehicles, the golf carts, walking tours, wonderful. But to have these large buses coming down our streets, it's just not fair to the neighbors and the folks in the neighborhood. So that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Well, this one's going to be difficult to read. Is it
Ron Gobble.
Ron Gobble? Gobble. 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 Ron Gobble. Thank you. How'd you get Ron out of there?
He's an architect.
Sorry about that.
So you've got somebody on the commission for you, huh?
Well, always good at reading my writing. Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the time. I've lived downtown for 2 decades. I live on Church Street now. I have an office building, a small office building on 5th. And the bottom line is these things, when they came along, we've had to stop business meetings. We've had to interferes with the retail shops that we have on that street. So we have economic damage because of this. We also have, as we're in our living rooms at night, getting blasted out. One thing I will point out is that in addition to the music, they'll also blow their horns. And, you know, you'll get blown off your sofa if you're not careful. The other aspect of it is the kind of music they play. I've heard music that's literally described oral sex. I'll happily send you the lyrics. I had to look it up and see if it was real. It was. You know, I've seen for enclosures prior to the enclosure coming along, I've seen anatomically correct blow-up dolls. I have seen a lot of balloons that were shaped like generally male organs. So, you know, we just got to control this. And so I appreciate your time and effort. And I want to be able to bring my granddaughter down in the middle of the afternoon, you know, without having to confront this or have someone yell at us. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ralph Schultz? Ralph Schultz. Oh. You're giving me a double take.
I apologize. I'm clearly not Ralph Schultz, but I'm Victoria Payne representing the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
So I apologize. Ralph really wanted to be here, but was pulled into a late conversation. We at the Chamber have 3 core concerns that we request the committee look at when it's looking over and reviewing these proposed rules. The safety of the individuals riding the vehicle, the congestion of the traffic in which they operate so that emergency vehicles and regular users of the road can navigate safely and effectively, including this interesting aspect of access to the right-of-way. And finally, we ask the committee address the disruption of the noise produced by the vehicles and the occupants during regular business hours with some sort of level of enforcement. We do know that Metro Code, there is a noise ordinance, as many have mentioned before, but the level of enforcement is something that's particularly interesting to us. Downtown is home to so many businesses, and a lot of our businesses are finding it a little more difficult to get their employees, their vendors, and a lot of their customers do because of some of these issues that have come up through this process. We've actually even seen a few businesses slowly begin to trek out of the downtown core because there's a simple imbalance between those who live and work in Nashville and those who are coming to visit Nashville. We are not proposing a complete disruption of business because we are the Chamber of Commerce and we support business, but we do hope that the members of the TLC consider some of these operating standards and these proposed rules to help improve safety and to meet the standards placed on other businesses that are operating in that area. So I wanted to thank you all for your time and your consideration, and thanks so much.
Thank you. Lisa Howler.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. Appreciate your time today. To the commissioners as well as to the TLC staff and anyone here from NDOT. I live at 920th Avenue South, and I am president of the Adelicia Condominium Association. And I am here on behalf of our board as well as our 186 owners. Adelicia is a high-rise community located in Midtown between Music Row and Vanderbilt and just steps from the Division Street Entertainment District. We are seeing a rise in the number of party buses in our neighborhood. I think I'm probably the first one so far today to speak to you from the Midtown area. We are seeing them all times of morning, noon, and night, blocking the public right-of-way. We have patrons that are, as the buses are stopping on our neighborhood streets, we have patrons that are using the porta potties or the construction sites in our neighborhood. We have many of the entertainment buses that are coming down through the alleyway behind the Division Street bars, which happens to run along our visitor parking area, as well as our dog park and our Adelicia Park. And we want to ask the commission to be mindful of the noise ordinance in Midtown, which is different than downtown area. Specifically, Chapter 9.2, Section A1, and Section A3. Speaking of the park, I do want to mention that the ordinance does say that that excessive noise is not allowed for personal use of any sound amplification on the public right-of-way, including streets, sidewalks, or in parks, under the control of the boards of Parks and Recreation, as to produce sounds that are audible 50 feet or more. While our park is not part of Metro, it is part of the Tennessee Land Trust for Tennessee. I'm also the Metro Beautification Commissioner for District 19, so obviously I have a passion for our parks.
Ms. Howler, I need you to wrap it up.
Thank you.
Okay.
We ask you to please consider the restriction of the routes on our neighborhood residential streets in Midtown. Thank you very much. We appreciate all that you all do for Nashville. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chris Clark. No, give me a break.
Hello, I'm Chris Clark. I'm a resident of the Adelicia in Midtown. And I'd like to point out our medical facilities in the Midtown area and our higher education facilities that are being impacted. Because we're so close to medical campuses and education campuses, we house a lot of doctors and in that immediate area of 3,000 homes. And so what we're finding is that we're already stressed out as a community, but our medical facilities are being stressed out at probably one of the worst times in our country in the middle of a pandemic. And we would ask for immediate relief from the noise in that area where there's medical and higher education, so that we can have restorative sleep and we can provide these services not only to residents but to tourists who might get sick and ill. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Scott Troxel. Scott Troxel. I think this is Luke Elliott. Mr. Elliott? That's a Luke. Okay, here we go.
Good afternoon. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. My name's Luke Elliott, and I live at 1900 Richard Jones Road. I was born and raised here in Nashville, and I love this city, and I want to apologize for the other day when I stormed out of here. But these party vehicles are killing the character of our great city. I work downtown at a bank, and I really hate going into the office, and it's in large part because of these vehicles, and I think you're going to see that with a lot of young people. It makes commuting a headache and working in the office pretty much impossible. We've already seen major businesses leave the downtown area: Pinnacle, Bass Berry Sims, Baker and Donaldson, and that's pretty serious. That's pretty serious. And they're disrupting our office's normal business hours. We can expect a lot of other businesses to relocate soon. And it's leaving our downtown in a shell of our former thriving business community. Nashville is quickly losing its reputation as a business-friendly, attractive location for conferences and conventions. We cannot sacrifice a main driver of our economy so a few bachelorette party buses can get hammered on a badly sprayed school bus. We have to get these things under control. If Nashville is forced to have these buses, wagons, tractors, and all the rest, then we need as few as possible and as strict rules as possible.
Mr. Elliott, I need you to wrap it up.
Okay, excuse me. Sorry, I'm almost done here. We're looking for the Transportation Licensing Commission to finally bring some common sense to this situation.
Tom Turner?
Good afternoon. Thank you for all you do. Try to stick to the 2 minutes. My 14-minute speech has just been thrown in the trash. I'm Tom Turner with the Nashville Downtown Partnership. We have 78,000 employees downtown, 15,000 residents, many of which were here long before there was ever anything such as a party bus. The ETVs or party buses negatively impact the quality of life of our city and specifically downtown. So, going with your request to limit to the regulations, I'll move forward on that specifically. We support the segmentation of sightseeing vehicles from other vehicles, looking at hours of operation no later than 10 o'clock, which is consistent with the quiet time in hotels and also my bedtime. Not during rush hour from 4 to 6, which is what pedal taverns have done for years. On establishing any routes or zones, please do not establish anything that overly affects downtown Nashville. We would like every neighborhood to suffer the same pain as downtown has done. Speaking facetiously, we don't want any pain on any of the neighborhoods. Ask you to reconsider the rule that has a limit of no more than 25 miles an hour on a party bus. A big part of what happens on party buses is they go too slow on purpose. So they purposefully, and you can see it going down the street for many high-rise where they purposefully go too slow to avoid stopping and starting without any care for anyone behind them, in front of them, or next to them. Enclosures should be required. All businesses downtown, I believe, have air conditioning. There should be no exception. If their customers want to be cool, they should put air conditioning in. And I would ask that you consider the proximity of operations of routes or zones to exclude both residential buildings, office buildings, in addition to churches and schools, and that loading and unloading with alcohol be restricted to private property. I think I covered it all in 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Thank you.
Ann Butterworth.
I'm Ann Butterworth. I live at 415 Church Street. I've lived downtown for approximately 13 years. I'll try not to duplicate. I was trying to take notes. I agree with the issues on noise, traffic congestion. I would also like to quickly point out to realize, for example, when the buses come down Church Street, if they block the Viridian, they're blocking over 300 residents trying to pull in. We have one entrance. So Church Street blocking up is a big concern. On parks, I would also point out that the Church Street Park across from the main library is starting our programming back up. And some of our biggest events were with children from the library, having 150 plus people there. The buses going by oftentimes are rude, having the comments. Enforcement is a big issue. The fines appear to be very low. Another gentleman spoke earlier about stepping up the enforcement and the fines, and that might be helpful in controlling the behavior. I think we need to work with the police department so that it is clear when the rules are to be enforced and to make it worthwhile for stopping and the enforcement. And that was 20 and 120. Section 100 about minors being allowed, is that consistent with minors in physical bars and locations? I don't think they're allowed in after 9. So should they be allowed on the buses? I have a couple of questions I'd like to pose later to you. I had questions on the 25 miles an hour. On the sound monitoring devices, is the documentation that will be required only when it exceeds the level, or will it be on during the entire time? Will there also be a requirement that it's proven that those devices are consistently on during the time the vehicle is in operation? Back in section 80, about the vehicle being properly marked with the information, the company name, is that's really the certificate holder's name or the doing business as name, and the numbers on the side, is it going to be so that a citizen can turn in the information and clearly identify the vehicle at the time? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Butterworth. Sonia Link.
My name is Sonia Link. I live at 1308 6th Avenue in the Germantown area. My major concern is about the routes and the designated areas that the entertainment vehicles are allowed to operate. I think it's been tried and proven that these vehicles are detrimental to the quality of life of residents of the areas where they operate. Thus, I request that the allowed areas for operations be restricted to the Lower Broad downtown tourist area, and that neighborhoods like Germantown be restricted and the operations not allowed in the neighborhood. Also, we have the rule that the vehicles may operate within 500 feet of schools and daycare. I would like to see parks also added to that. And that's it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Eloise, is it Tyner? Gone? Okay, thank you. Adam Nicholson?
Hi, I'm Adam Nicholson, and I live in West Nashville. I'm here on behalf of Transit Now Nashville, and we're all transit advocates. So I want to point out some information that I've learned from transportation organizing over the years, that the biggest challenge we've heard for WeGo is no matter how good they do to get the schedule sharp outside the city, when you get to downtown, having a predictable schedule maintain itself can be next to impossible considering construction, the current situation that we're talking about right now. So whatever we can do to make the downtown situation better, I would encourage us to move that direction. Some of you all might have seen the recent news about the ranking of Nashville in terms of how bikeable of a city we are. 100 cities ranked in the country, we're 99th. So whatever we can do to improve the downtown situation for pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, everybody, I appreciate the work the commission is doing, and whatever we can do for all users would be great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. Mr. Sizemore, you're back. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. I just want to talk about a couple different options that the city has with us. I'm Chris Sizemore. I live in Germantown. I've been downtown for almost 9 years now. And we started off with golf carts 10 years ago and worked with Billy to implement rules and regulations for our industry. And they were great. I mean, I had a hand in writing that, had a city council person sponsor my bill, and it passed. And that's the reason golf carts and LSVs are regulated, which was something we worked for. So rules are definitely made to protect everybody in the city. But the couple things I want to talk about is The reason that we have lifted vehicles, so we have a couple different options. We have the golf carts, we have the lifted trucks, and then we have a tractor, and then we have party vehicles and large group transportation vehicles too. So we do provide a bunch of different services for the community. The reason the monster trucks actually even exist is because of my 6-year-old son. It was something for the kids to do, and it's actually the #1 thing for kids to do in Nashville. So that's the one thing I want to have a differentiate between tours and a party vehicle. I would not like to be on the same route as a party bus with children in it. So we take them on a tour of the city, the parks, just like our golf carts and the other vehicles. Combined, our company should do 188,000 guests this year alone. So combined with a couple of other ones, we're talking 500,000 people coming through our door this year. So this is something that the city wants and needs. We had senior citizens on our bus this morning that just wanted to ride around, live their life again, and enjoy the city. So, you know, routes for the party buses, differentiate for the tour vehicles, so we can still bring in the families, still bring in the kids, and the other rules and regulations I'm completely okay with. Just differentiating the two is all I'd ask. Because we have to give something else for the families to do here. Because right now it's drink on Broadway. It's not what we want to be known for. So if there's something else for the children and other families to do, then they do. Even the party buses, we have soccer teams that rent it. We have proms that took our party buses.
Thank you, Mr. Sizemore. Mr. Sizemore, maybe you could share with all the new commissioners. I know we worked together on, on the golf carts.
Yeah.
And we started with rules, and then they evolved and they changed as we found the need for the community as well as for traffic control and things of that nature. What was your experience going through that with this commission?
The experience was perfect. That's the reason I'm not as nervous as probably everybody else. This is everybody's main livelihood. Our golf carts are regulated. It's been 10 years.
I remember you being quite concerned about your golf carts.
I was. Yeah, I know, right?
Yes, he was.
So we do have a tractor, and the tractor would like to go on the same routes as the hop-on, hop-off trolley, and it's for something for families. It's not even going to be a party vehicle. So
talk about the experience you had, though. We've already.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience, and I understand all of this will evolve, and that's the reason I know the talks that Billy's had with everybody else, that this will evolve into something that everybody can live with, and the city can too. So I appreciate the help and anything else is needed.
And I appreciate you sharing that from your experience before with the golf carts, that Joyride was the name of the company, right? Yes. That you're not as nervous this time going around. So,
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Dill, I understand you gave your time to Mr. Sizemore, right? All right, that's the folks that I had written requests for speaking here today.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would ask you and I know you said you didn't want to, but it might be, we're a little quicker than I actually expected. If there may be somebody who came in who didn't get to, I would hate to have someone challenge our public hearing.
Oh, Mr. Fields. I was shooting to be done, to have the public hearing done by 4, but all right, I have been encouraged to leave the public meeting open. Is there anyone who feels compelled, and I use the word compelled, or I welcome anyone to come up and speak if you'd like to.
Just want to make sure if we can still submit some minor comments to you, and you'll accept them.
We hope to be talking, if it's about, we're always open to comments and suggestions, but in a few moments we're going to be closing the public hearing and going on to discussing among the commissioners the proposed rules and with the suggestions that have been given. I tell you, if you could maybe write them down and pass them up to our group here, would that be all right?
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of the draft being available until yesterday.
Okay. Do you have some that you could tell us right now about?
I don't think they were worth broad.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have something they'd like to? Okay, I see some hands. All right, just if you could just line up here, and we'll see how many we have that feel like.
Very quick. It's just a legal question for your legal representative. I represent the big drag bus, and I would like some clarification on when we're talking about the insurance requirements, what liability it is the city have on private business. What exposes the city to liability
That's probably a question more for the city's insurance.
Yeah, I respectfully, I don't want to answer that right now. I would prefer to consult with our director of insurance, but from a general perspective, what liability do we have for your vehicles?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have other businesses in the city, and I carry insurance, of course, on those. And if I have an incident that happens at my business, I'm personally responsible for that. And therefore, I carry insurance that keeps me in business. And I'm wondering what exposure the city has if something were to happen on one of my businesses.
And I don't feel comfortable answering that question because it's a case-by-case situation, and I'm not going to advise members of the public on what may happen if something happens to something that you may have. It's too far remote from having like a specific answer and me being comfortable with putting that on the record. I'm sorry.
Are you aware, or is anybody from the TL, I guess from your office aware, do we require other vehicles that operate in the public right-of-way to name Metro as an official insured?
All of the insurance that are, all of the companies we regulate are required to name Nashville, name the metropolitan government as also insured. Have forever.
So it's been typical for a
Yes.
long time.
Yes.
And I will say, for a general perspective, from a broad picture perspective, the liability insurance that we ask them to obtain is to protect public safety. It's not, the number one goal with the insurance imposed is the public safety piece. It's to protect those members of the public that are operating the vehicles, that are in the right of way, those kind of instances.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us
Hi,
what
my name is Katie Kludak. I'm a co-owner of Upstage Party Bus. I would like to talk about the 20 people on board and having the 2 hosts. I don't believe our company does need to have the 2 hosts. First of all, I have 5 cameras in my bus. I can see them live right now. I have a tour out right now. I can view these. I watch them all the time. He watches them all the time. We are in constant view of our party bus. It is our baby. It's worth more than our house. So for us to put another DJ on or another bartender on, we're going to lose staff that way. They're not going to make as much money. There's only 30 people in this bus, and they're splitting now 2 ways, and now they're going to have to split 3 ways. It's going to be hard to keep these customers or these employees on. The other thing is the weather. The weather one on the bill, it says something about weather. Our bus is fully able to take certain weathers as far as like code reds and stuff. Y'all know Nashville calls code red every other day. I mean, for us to not be able to run because they say there's a code red or they say this when nothing ever happens. I understand some of the companies maybe can't, but we can. We have a coach bus. We have a huge bus. We have a canvas top. We have cover. We have everything we need to have on there. So for us to not be able to run when there's inclement weather, obviously there is sometimes we pull our staff for safety, and we will pull them for safety reasons. But to tell us that we can't run when every day there's a code red, I mean, it's not good for business. It's not good for anybody. So that is my other question. Is that it? Oh, we do have a scanner on that all of our drivers scan every single ID that comes in. We get the bad IDs, we get the fake IDs. We don't allow them to ride our bus. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that everyone going on our bus is of age. They don't have fake IDs, and I believe we're catching more people than people on the streets are. And I mean, I really don't think that. I gotta say, I really don't appreciate people saying that party buses are unsafe. There's been one incident since I've known about that anyone's really known about, and there's a lot of people falling off bar roofs. So if you guys are gonna put the standard of us having rails, then the bars need to have the same exact thing.
Thank you.
I did see a chuckle about the price of our bus. Our bus is in fact more than our house. It was $500,000 to make. We put everything into it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Chase Sanders. I've met some of you before, Mr. Fields. Good to see you again, sir. We come out of the school bus industry in Rutherford County. So our standards have always been the same standards that we have nationwide for school buses. Our buses are unmodified. Everything is still in place the way it's supposed to be. We're a luxury transport company. We're a hybrid though, so we're the best of Wise and Gray Line, and we also have some of the same attributes that our peers have. And we've supported them since day one. There do need to be regulations, that's reasonable. But we don't spend our time on Broadway. We're everywhere else. So I'm running tours to distilleries, breweries, to vineyards for wine tours. We do huge corporate events and we're transporting people from a lot of the hotels here, Opryland Hotel, to downtown. We do Bridgestone, we do the Ryman, we do Ascend, we do all of the community events that people want to come together and celebrate in the transport, where they don't have to take 5 or 6 limos. And so we do that like clockwork. We do not want to be on Broadway. That is not my goal. I don't want my buses idling down there. They're 40-foot-long buses, 8 feet
Do
wide.
your buses serve alcohol and have music?
We do not serve alcohol. It is BYOB, and general
Right.
wine, beer.
So people can bring alcohol.
They can bring alcohol on our bus, that's correct.
And do you have music or
Yes, we have
entertainment?
music and we have video. So we have a TV, and they can play corporate videos, they play all kinds of things. And one of our huge portions of our business is children's birthday parties. So we have 3,018 video games on 7 video game consoles. They celebrate their birthdays. We had a family open Christmas presents on Christmas on our bus. So we do a completely different aspect. Like I said, we're like Wise and Gray Line merged with and enclosed. We're completely enclosed. Nothing's been modified. So we're a totally different animal. So we want to serve the transportation. We'll pick up at the airport, maybe 15, 20, 30 guests, bring them to their hotels, exit Nashville. We have no desire to be down here any more than we have to be. So when we
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to close the public hearing now, and we are going to take a 5-minute break. Commissioners need to probably stand up and stretch their legs, and some need to use the restroom. So a 5-minute break, and then we're going to start back with the discussions about the proposed rules. I believe we are now at the point of opening the debate among the commissioners regarding the proposed rules. I think would be a nice way to begin. I really appreciate, I mean this sincerely, I really appreciate everybody being here and your experiences that you shared with us, from community members to council people to folks who have gone through this before and who have businesses. And we take it very serious what folks have said here today. I also want to mention that by 6 o'clock, we do have to be out of here. The place locks up at 5 o'clock. Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it earlier?
Well, the front door closes at 5, so our level of security drops in a major way.
So we're going to really shoot for by 5:30 to be out here, okay? If we can't get through this, then we will move it on to another meeting. All right. My suggestion is that we go ahead and have some discussion. Don't worry about making motions and things of that nature right now, but just start having some discussions. I thought I would, and I'm open for anybody to add to this, but it seemed to me we heard from 3 different groups today. Those groups were community members, owners who have a vested interest in equipment, and probably some contracts that have the entertainment transportation. And we also heard from some of the council people regarding the, we also heard from insurance people, and then we heard from some council people as well. So 4 different groups we heard from. What I took note of in particular was a concern about the rule regarding enclosures, which also seems to balance with the noise compliance with noise ordinances for the city. The routes, in particular, including parks, was suggested by some. Other folks, there was a lot of people saying not in my neighborhood, which I seem to follow along traffic congestion and noise, reducing the quality of of life in their communities, and that includes downtown. Also with the routes, it was about the parks and then the hours of operation, whether it be 10, 11, 12. Didn't seem to be, I didn't hear anybody say that they thought earlier than 10 was necessary, so I kind of put that as 10, 11, and 12 seemed to be the hours. Some people wanted to move up to 12. I think the rule proposes 11, and then there was some indication about 10 o'clock. There was also some talk about the 4 to 6 break in there. It was interesting. One of the owners talked about that's actually really a 4-hour break for them, not just a 2-hour break. The rail height was another issue. I think Mr. Fields has some comments about that. There was also a lot of discussion about how many chaperones needed to be on the vehicle, and I was interested when I heard someone mention that it ought to be, maybe the number should be dependent upon the number of actual passengers rather than just the number of seats in the vehicle. There was also concern about safety with the number of chaperones. And then again, there was also talk about technology, using surveillance cameras to monitor people's behaviors. I'm very interested in this locations for pickup and drop-offs to reduce traffic issues. The insurance matter, I'll leave that to the experts, but we did hear people talk about it varying from 1.5 million, 3 million, up to 5 million. I am concerned that we stay in compliance with the state. If they require 5 million for 15 passenger vehicles or higher, I think we have to stay in state compliance. The big thing, enforcement. And Mr. Fields, I think you'll be able to address that today too, is that we hope that we're going to generate enough funds to be able to put people out there for enforcement, to make sure that noise ordinances are met. I was a little confused about the speed limit issues. It was interesting that someone suggested we need to move them up a little faster. And then we've been looking at it from a perspective of a maximum speed limit for safety. Someone said we need to have a limit or a minimum restriction to keep them moving on the road. And then finally, the thing that really caught my attention, and I think it made the other commissioners as well, that hadn't been thought about before, is that the different types of ETs, entertainment vehicles, I called it educational vehicles, but vehicles that are being used for cultural education, historical, versus those that are clearly for having a good time, for lack of a better word. I started wondering, the school buses that drive in from the various different counties outside of here that park up by the state legislature and block Charlotte Avenue, are they entertainment vehicles? They're bringing people for tours of the Capitol, tours of Nashville. And they're bringing children, Are they entertainment vehicles under the broad definition that the state might have for an entertainment vehicle? They're coming in for tours of the city. So there's a lot to think about here today. And perhaps I'm open for anybody else has other thoughts they want to add, but I also thought maybe Mr. Fields, you could guide us through some of these rules and we can start taking them piece by piece.
Yeah, I think you've got a couple of different ways to go in terms of consideration. One of the things you could do is generally, as you have just done, Mr. Chairman, is put issues out on the table that you discovered during the public hearings. I know 2 of the commissioners have already put pen to paper or finger to key and had some ideas and thoughts, and just before the meeting, because you couldn't see them before the meeting, I placed them on the table for discussion. We can, again, we could take the next 28 minutes and work through issues that may have come up that you'd like to see some modification of or hour, I'm sorry. You wanted to go to 5:30. I apologize. So it's just a matter of how you'd like to go. I'm certainly happy to go rule by rule and talk about, where we were and what we were trying to do and see if you're satisfied or if you'd like to modify. And plus, I still have my supervisor, Assistant Director of Public Works, Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure present if we have issues related to operations, because his specialty is operations. So,
what's the commission's preference?
I'm delighted to begin to talk through the list if people have opinions and want to share opinions that you've made, and to have I think you did hit the nail on the head for the issues. Right. You captured the same.
So let's take your list and tackle them using your list.
Okay. All right, enclosures. Let's take some of the big ones first. What do y'all
if we're talking about how we feel or look, I mean, the enclosures came about because of noise.
Right.
Is that right?
Noise and also, I think
Keeping the party off the street.
keeping the party in the vehicle.
In the
yeah,
vehicle.
Yeah.
And,
Would be a broader way of saying it.
And we've heard, I guess, from numerous folks that it gets too hot in the vehicle because they had a roof and they removed the roof and they put a new roof on that doesn't have any insulation and it's clear, right?
It certainly changes the structure of the bus and the character of the bus. I don't speak for the bus owners. They certainly know more about buses than I do, but anytime you alter a vehicle that was manufactured in a, depending on how it was modified, I should say, you're certainly gonna make, it's gonna be different.
Or a trailer, like I watched
Tractors.
the tractors pull the trailers with white roofs and with air conditioning units that sit on the roofs. I've heard that they get warm.
I get lots of emails and lots of texts and phone calls every day and every night saying, look at the temperature. So, and again, I'm not endorsing one or the other, but, you know, I think that's what the commission has to look at is the two major issues. The number one primary issue is safety. Is how do we make sure if they're unenclosed or enclosed, whichever, what makes them safe? Now, sound is certainly important, but safety is the number one thing I hope we can focus on. And that's.
I would agree with you that safety is critical. I think Nashvillians care about quality of life.
Yeah.
So we've heard from council members that talk about their neighborhoods. We've heard from downtown residents, midtown residents that talk about neighborhoods and quality of life and how do we find the right balance.
Well,
that's the right word.
If I might add, you know, as everybody's had an opportunity to look at these rules, but we're talking about section 040. And if you look at it, it gives the option to the owner to have an enclosed vehicle or an unenclosed vehicle. Now, let's go to the unenclosed vehicles. If it is an unenclosed vehicle, the word is must, be shown to be capable of complying with all safety and noise level requirements. On top of that, when you go down a little bit further, they're on probation for 1 year. So there's nothing in the rule that prohibits an unenclosed vehicle. It's that they're going to have to comply with what we all want. That is safety and noise compliance, noise ordinance compliance.
Sorry.
Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
but on the other hand, it's a little bit inconsistent, because if you go back up to A, you're saying that if it's enclosed, you have to even keep the windows closed while people are drinking. But you can be in an unenclosed vehicle and drink as long as you comply. I mean,
right.
Do you know, that doesn't make a great deal of sense to me.
So what you're pointing out is that if they're consuming alcohol in the enclosed vehicle, they've got to be really completely enclosed. In an unenclosed vehicle, they can drink without being enclosed.
Is the issue though drinking or noise? So they could roll around and drink and not scream and not play loud music and be in compliance.
Right.
And I would say if they're
It
rolling
doesn't
around,
help. It doesn't help with the party getting out to the street.
well, if they're rolling around, they're not complying with safety.
So if you're serving alcohol, you're required to be enclosed?
No.
No.
I'm saying the vehicles are rolling.
Oh, okay.
The tires are rolling.
All right. I'm just picturing some
I
of
don't
the
think so.
possibilities.
They're rolling on the floor of the bus.
If I could just direct you, if you look at, and I'm sure you've done this, but just to help you along, 050 sets forth those safety measures that unenclosed vehicles have to comply with. So there are still some things that they would have to do, like having the doors closed, or having all exits securely closed while in operation, and have a barrier capable of stopping a person from falling through the opening. So there are certain hoops that that they would have to go through, if it were unenclosed.
Yeah. My thought is, though, I can't even open the windows if it's enclosed, right? But I can be unenclosed, and as long as I'm complying, I'm safe.
And,
I mean,
and that's
okay.
that was my question. Well, the question I was about to ask is, you have a must be shown to be capable of complying. How do they show that?
Well, I
In your
think
mind?
it's shown a couple of different ways. I believe it's shown through, most of it's gonna be technology. That's what we've learned these last few months of looking at it. For instance, if you take bar speakers and put across the backs of the seats, and people are actually sitting there, you're only gonna hear this sound here. There's directional issues, and certainly I've been educated by everybody out there. There's issues of where speak, look at them shaking their head, yes, we've educated you. We've listened. There's ways of bringing technicians onto those buses and basically containing most of the noise on the bus, or at least that audible noise within that 50 feet. So by doing that and then putting monitors on it, and you know, we're kind of looking like monitors when they were talking about the sealed monitors, like we do a taxi cab meter. Once we seal it, once it is sealed and it puts the commission seal on it, if it's broken, that's a huge problem. And the same thing would go with this. So I think a lot of it is we put it on them, and we've been pretty successful in other things. We put these things on the companies and say, you must do this. And if you don't, you go back to what the violations are. You've got a problem. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If it's proven that you've done it, you've got issues. You know, if you adopted the issues of what holders have to do, you know, basically failing to comply with all the terms that have been established in this ordinance, as well as in the rest of the Metropolitan Code of Law and rules from this commission, you could lose. You know, you're subject to discipline. You did mention fines earlier. We had a conversation about what fines could be, and apparently the beer board is governed through a different set of laws that are at the state level that allow them to have a wider latitude than other agencies. We do not believe at the present time we have a fine ability at the commission level. We can write citations, and those citations can be carried through the environmental court, and we have written many citations over the years and will continue to. So again, a lot of it is back on the company, and so that's what that's about. What the must talks about is, if you do it and you agree to everything, you sign up, and then you fail, then you know you may get a warning the first time. Then the second time you're coming to the commission, and we could ask for anything from probation, suspension, revocation.
Commissioner Westlake, in looking at the issue you brought up of what appears to be inconsistency between unenclosed and enclosed, for it to be an enclosed vehicle, it has to have the windows closed when it's operating. I think the additional language in there of any passenger in possession of open container alcohol probably is unnecessary, in that if you got passenger in there and you're operating, the windows got to be closed.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, if you think that's inconsistent to have that provision about alcohol in there, then that's something that you could edit out to make those.
What I'm wondering is, maybe they were anticipating if the vehicle's not moving, because it says while the vehicle's in operation with customers aboard, well, and any passenger, you know, so.
These two sections actually came from existing ordinances that were passed by the council. So we just basically took their definitions and brought them forward, or their sections on this. So the commission has, you know, we put it there as, I won't say a placeholder, but at least a starting point about what you're going to allow and not allow.
I really think that language, after looking at the second sentence up from the bottom of the page there, while the vehicle's in operation with customers aboard, you could put a period there and remove the "and any passenger in possession of open container of alcohol," because whether they have a container of alcohol in their hands or not, once they're on board and this thing's operating, they have to have the windows closed to meet the definition of an enclosed vehicle.
Yeah, and if that's what the Metro Council says, and that's true, but it just doesn't make sense to me that you couldn't ventilate.
The council no longer says that. So
Well,
bear that in mind.
you can put in there that they can ventilate. That's
Sure.
why you
I mean,
guys
that's-
are.
Yeah.
That's why you guys are here. You know, if you feel like that.
I mean, you heard a lot about the heat.
Yes.
You know, and if you're allowing unenclosed vehicles,
why
Why
that's
can't
not
you
allowed.
ventilate a closed vehicle?
Because the enclosed vehicles are dealing with the noise by being enclosed. The unenclosed vehicles are dealing with the noise by reducing or moderating the sound of their stereo system.
Or they just have to comply with the noise, however that
Right, if they're opening the
works.
windows, then you comply by the same rules of the.
I think the biggest issue that brought the ordinance in was not the alcohol, but the sound.
Correct.
So.
Sound and traffic.
Right,
I mean,
so the sound
It's a
seems to
mess.
be the elephant in the room and not so much the alcohol or the vehicle moving, which we've heard from the residents downtown, technicians that have been hired on the vehicles. They've all identified that the sound is the bigger issue, and then the enclosure comes in with the risk management of their patrons drinking alcohol in the back of a vehicle that's 100 degrees. So I think what we would need to modify or even consider is, again, we're here for public safety, and even though these might be visitors to our town, they're now part of our public, and their safety is also our concern. So I would think either on their behalf or on our behalf, something be modified to bring the temperature down in the back of the vehicles as to whatever the council's already been put in place, like you said, to allow these vehicles to be ventilated, because I would hate to see the party vehicles not necessarily turn into something where people are getting hurt because they're drinking and partying, but because we have a heat wave and we've enclosed these vehicles with 9 to 30 people in the back of them. Having said that, I think that falls on the operators and owners of these vehicles to maybe spend a little bit more money, be it to put them back to factory standards where they can be air conditioned. I know coach vehicles, like one of the gentlemen said, they can be enclosed and air conditioned well. I've personally used them on many occasions, and I think maybe just the standard of the vehicle might be a little bit more the focus. Just thought.
There is a way for air conditioning and insulated roofs, and insulated glass panels that address both noise and passenger comfort.
Again, and that's a cost issue we're talking about.
Yeah.
Nobody
Okay.
wants to really
It
address.
costs money.
It's the cost of business.
So coming back to 0440, A and B. Anybody got a problem with the way they're written? That we have,
I had a question about probationary status.
Yes.
I mean, aren't certificates or licenses basically for 1 year anyway? So how's probation different than?
I'm sorry.
No.
Historically, there have been times where the commission has brought vehicles and companies into operation and placed them on probation immediately based on something that they chose. In this particular case, everybody's on probation from the standpoint of the commission.
Right.
I mean, you got to follow the rules. This was just a thought to make sure that those critical issues of safety, and we maybe should put it on both of them, but the critical issue of safety and noise be addressed every day without question, that, you know, you're basically on trial every day to make sure you do it right.
I would think that the terminology of being on probation for 1 year would send the message that the unenclosed people would be on thinner ice for compliance with the noise ordinance. If they don't do it, they could lose their permit. Now, after that first year of operation, maybe, you know, then they would come off the probation when they renew for the permit.
Could I ask a question? Exactly what's the authority of the beer board, and what role do they play in this?
The beer board issues a permit, two kinds of permits. One is a BYOB type permit, and I'm going to simplify it. The other is a service permit. So they can actually get a permit from the beer board and sell the beer on the vehicle. The beer board cannot give them a permit until you approve a certificate of public convenience and necessity for that company. So many of them have applications either pending or more or less on file, as I understand it, with the beer board, waiting to see what this commission decides to do.
What's their enforcement authority? I'm just sort of speculating. What?
Their enforcement authority is very strong when it comes to the service of beer. Their fining ability is much greater. I mean, you could have they can obviously take your permits.
Okay.
They can take your authority to serve it. They can also put, biggest fine the city of Nashville can put on is $50, except when you get to the beer board, and maybe others, but the beer board under state law was given additional authority, all the beer boards in the state, to go higher levels.
Do they do like on-site inspections? I mean, could they literally enter a bus and do an inspection?
That was one of the issues that came up, and one of the things that exists in all of the things we do. All of our vehicles are open for full inspection by any Metropolitan, whether it's the police department or the Transportation License Commission or NDOT, any appropriate agency. Our ordinances allow that. So when we're talking about probable cause and not probable cause, the truth of the matter is we have the right to do it under the law. Now, if they don't want to be licensed, then we don't have that authority, and then they won't have the authority to be on the street. But that's part of the rules. Is if we need to see what's going on with the vehicle, we want to be able to get on the vehicle, and we've been able to do that for as long as I've been in government. We've had that authority on the things that we regulate.
Because they accept that when they apply and receive a license.
Part of the rules, part of the opportunity, part of what the law says.
And I'm sort of reaching. Does the beer board, if they find a violation, do they shut down the operator right
They
then?
can. I mean, they can shut down their part of the operation. In other words, they can suspend their beer. We haven't explored how much more authority, but typically what we've been doing is working in teams with the police department and the beer board already. Just trying to make sure we've introduced. I've had lots of calls from you, and they know that, saying, well, I didn't like this or I didn't like that, and why are you doing this? And there was an opportunity to say, this is where we think we're going. Right. We'd like to, we want you to see who we are.
So the beer board intends to do that type of thing?
If they need to, yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Shall we move on to another? Mr. Fields, you mentioned that some commissioners had submitted some suggestions, and you had them in.
Actually, I put them in front of each.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, the two we had were about the bikes and the scooters.
But whoever the commissioners were that made some suggestions, could you speak up?
I did.
No, Ms. Williams and Mr. Hayes both.
All right. How about ladies first? Ms. Williams?
Okay.
What were you looking, if you could refer us to the draft as to what you were looking at?
Okay. I didn't number it that way in my list. I did talk about the time period with the curfew and using the Ascend Amphitheater as the marker where they have an 11 p.m. curfew.
Yeah.
Because of noise, it would seem appropriate to have the ETs off the street by 10 in order to remove that particular issue from traffic congestion and traffic configurations, especially when there are multiple events at the major venues downtown, and there are several major venues downtown. Rush hour limitations also, such as those put in place for pedal taverns, need to be applied here. And of course, we've heard from these folks here, and I understand that they have issues with this, and so that may be a point where we can look at some differences there. So I apologize for not having set that according to the numbers here.
Are you suggesting that the commission be permitted to restrict it or have the vehicles off the streets by 10 o'clock during special events downtown?
Well, I think that if you had there's almost always special events. I mean, just about every night. And you could possibly look at handling this so that it's done when there are special events only. But I think that getting those out is gonna help the police department, it's gonna help traffic management, it's gonna help with safety with pedestrians, and so that would be my thinking behind that.
This is your list, Betsy.
Yes.
Got it. You guys may know this, who has the really loud barge horn on Broadway? It's, when you're on Broadway, it's like a barge horn that's incredibly loud.
There have been some people that have air horns, yes.
Is that in an a transportation vehicle, or is it?
Not the one that I know, I don't know of one, but it's very possible. There's an air horn mounted on one.
Yeah, I've got that specified, no air horns or sirens and blowing horns allowed. Because it's not just the music, it's also those things, and it's the rambunctious behavior from the patrons who are on the vehicles as well. We've all heard them called the woo-woo girls.
Your thought though on the 10 o'clock was a
Was
combination
because
of quality of life?
Well, it's quality of life. You know, look at the Ascend, they've already said you need to stop music at 11 o'clock because it interfered with people in East Nashville, up at Rutledge Hill and all that. So, so the same thing would apply for quality of life with noise.
But also getting
But
vehicles
off the
so
street
that we
for
can-
safety, for
We
transportation.
can dump downtown traffic and get
Yes.
downtown traffic out when we're trying to get 30,000 cars out of the core at 11 o'clock.
That's correct.
So I'm sorry, I'm thick, I guess. So why 10 PM instead of the 11 PM that Ascend uses?
Well, because if they're still going to be on the street at 11 o'clock, then it's, if an event lets out at 11, and you've got those vehicles out there still at 11, it just gives a little more time for street clearance to make transportation artery a little clearer for other people. There are a lot of vehicles, we don't even know how many of them are out there. You made that statement earlier.
But
And-
we will know in May.
We
because
will,
you'll be
yes,
issuing the
because-
permits for the numbers.
Mhm.
So,
And then they'd have, is the number of the big sticker on the back of the vehicle that's clear, so you would know every vehicle that's licensed, is that what that's intended to be?
With the QR code, which is a great idea. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I mean it. Thank you.
Something, I mean, just something.
I'm old, I don't think
Well,
those thoughts.
It's something to, I guess my question was, and then maybe this is, piggybacks on Ms. Williams, is, how many, knowing that it's actually licensed, that there's something, because there could be unlicensed ones that are like unlicensed taxi cabs in New Orleans. I don't think we have them here, but like, you go there, God.
They're everywhere, New Orleans, Jamaica, wherever.
Yeah, right.
which will fall under the enforcement aspects of it that I think we're gonna be able to do, so.
Relative to the enforcement, and this is what I was kind of asking about earlier, is when we look at the section of the code that talks about violations and fees, is that's 101030, and so it's basically a $50 violation per day,
Yes.
unlimited. You could have 100 violations, and it's $50. I mean, I hear of.
I think you can have $50 fine per violation.
Per violation.
Per day.
And I hear, I've heard many of your complaints about noise on Broadway. And there are folks that are bar owners that maybe are too loud every day, and they just pay the $50 fee. Mr. Cheek recommended or kind of gave the idea of a regressive fee of $1,500 to $15,000 to revocation. Could we have a revocation?
Well, at that point, I think that if you had a repeat offender, you would bring them before the TLC.
And potentially revoke their permit.
Right,
Revoke, suspend, fine.
right.
Do we have the authority to fine?
No, not as of yet.
It does not appear that we have the authority to fine directly. We have the authority to.
You suspend them, you're finding them.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what it's.
Now, we can issue citations.
If you take their operations down for 30 days, it's a fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a big fine. And they do seem to respond.
Out of
to that.
business, yeah.
So,
Commissioner Warren, did you bring up, you had something to bring up?
I did, and now I lost it because I got focused on what he was saying. So
Okay.
it'll come
I was
back
gonna
to
bring
me.
something up real quick, simply because,
You're right.
my
That's a
wife's
bigger
on a
hammer.
bachelorette party
You're right,
right
Bill.
now.
Thank you.
It's not in this city, but, part of what, she had brought up and had brought to my attention was something, I can't remember who brought it up, but someone from one of the neighborhoods. Is there a regulation, and have we not put something into effect that has to do with nudity, lewd objects, any of those things being allowed, open to the public? Isn't there something already in place that regulates that, or does that not apply?
It is not clear on many things. This last year, we had a very large phallic symbol appear on Broadway on the back of a pickup truck. That was just standalone on the back of the truck. Because there was no, all it was there, it was not illegal. So the fact of having a symbol like that on the street is not illegal based on what legal advised me at that point, because the issue was it some sort of a vehicle that was operating for hire? And it was not. And it was not, the symbol itself was not.
Placing it on a vehicle that's for hire.
Yeah,
for
we
the
would
public.
probably need to ask our lawyers to do more research and offer an opinion exactly on what you would like. In other words, if you propose it, we could then go to them and ask if they can make sure that it's legal and within the authority of the commission and the metropolitan government.
There's First Amendment concerns.
Well, yeah, but I know there's a lot of, it's a gray area to a certain extent, but I don't think you're allowed to streak down Broadway either, just because it's your First Amendment right.
I think again, it depends if you're talking about things, objects versus people. I think there are differences in there, but again, that's where the legal folks probably give us, because, my law school experience is very limited.
Well, asking legal, would we be stepping on any First Amendment rights if we included in our sessions to put rules and regulations to say no objects, blown up plastic or otherwise, that resemble body parts that are unclothed or that would be considered lewd be allowed
Yeah,
on these open? Would that step on any?
I hear you. What I would want to do, and I think the best thing to do with something like that is for you to propose the language to us and let us look at it. It is a slippery slope, I will say, and it's just something that we would have to do a deep dive on. And I'm not saying that it would offend. I'm not saying it's illegal. I don't know. You would have to tell me specifically what you want, and then we would have to move from there, because the area of law is gigantic, first of all, and it's always changing, and I don't have a real idea of what we would be saying that a person would be prohibited from doing. If it's speaking, that's one thing. If it's putting a sticker, that's another thing. If it's displaying something on a sign, that's another thing. It's just huge. So I can't answer it without knowing.
So then the appropriate, if you wanted to, rather than pass a rule today, but if you wanted to propose some language of what you'd like for legal to review and let the commission say, yeah, that's what we want to know, and tweak it a little bit, then you say, and then by the time we get back to finishing this, which obviously won't be today, legal would be able to come back with an opinion saying, yes, this is what you can do, or this is what you're limited to.
And this is what we suggest.
Can I make a suggestion? Rather than us try to come up with some language, I think the spirit here is to avoid offensive, lewd, nude, crude. Out of respect for our downtown community as well as the reputation of Nashville, I would ask Metro Legal to come up with a language that we could put in there as part of the compliance requirement for the vehicles. No one wants to see a particular swear word painted on the side of a bus going down Broadway. So rather than us trying to come up with the language, I'd rather the legal department come up with it. Whether inciting a riot, language of that nature too as well.
Well, and I'm thinking that somebody had emailed us a suggestion of a code of conduct. I mean, is that within our
We
rights
have
to?
code of conduct in other
But I mean,
sections of
yeah.
our code, right? So in the taxi cab code, we have some code of conduct sort of things, but it's really related to the driver of the car, how the
not
driver
passengers.
treats the
Okay.
passenger. This is sort of, and again, like, you have to take a step back, because you guys, your number one goal, right, is to look at the safety, right? So safety is your number one is your number one concern. So in that vein, you're really trying to prevent, you have to sort of tie it in. And I'm just trying to figure out how we would do that.
Well, if I'm driving, just to throw this out here, and out the corner of my eye, I see a 5-foot male member that probably would
Distract you.
be distracting, or female parts as well, I would say that would bring into public safety.
Why don't we, as the chair suggested, why don't we take a shot at it to make to do some research, to let legal see what they can do. We do, in the taxi cab, in 672, the taxi cab ordinance, we have code of conduct for the driver and for the passenger. So Bill of Rights is what they're called. So we have some history, and we've got some precedent for things that we can impose, and has been tested, and we have this commission and the government has the authority to do it. In fact, the passenger Bill of Rights was actually passed by the Metro Council down to the commission.
And I would want to look at not just in sexually provocative images, but also fighting words that incite riots or fights. I'm concerned also about some vehicles that could be offensive that had, say, swastikas on them, or I don't even want to start treading into this area today, but there things that might incite violence in the streets.
We'll look at it and we'll
Yeah.
report back, and we'll give you an idea of what we think is responsible and legal.
Because if we issue a permit and then someone decides to change the nature of the people they're touring through Nashville on, we could have a problem. So. But thank you for bringing that recommendation. I think started from one on your list there. So, I don't want us to get too bogged down. On the other hand, I want us to be thorough. So we need to think about what's the best way for us to work through this. I think we've covered the enclosure versus the unenclosed vehicles, and we may want to tweak the language in there regarding allowing ventilation of the windows as long as they stay within the noise compliance.
I was gonna say, if you comply with noise, I think that, because I do think there's a safety issue, as you were pointing out.
And I want to pass this around real quick, because I had made this suggestion, and I know it's not going to be received well by the community here, but the noise and the ventilation, that whole issue is in that, again, going back to technology, I know you guys have all in your industry heard of a silent party where everybody that's in the party can hear the music, but nobody outside of the party can hear the music. Someone in the audience basically gave me a beta test where they had tested that on one of their vehicles, and it didn't necessarily go over well with everyone, but that seemed to be a very small test, and it does not.
If you want to hear live feedback, we have it.
I ran that tour.
Yeah, and again, I'm hearing the word "that," which means we're talking about a singular tour.
Correct.
And I'm also bringing into the account that part of the reason why we limit your operating hours later at night is not only the traffic, but the noise. and you are saying that you lost a certain amount of your patrons because they didn't necessarily want to put it on, or because other people have worn it, which there are ways around that. There's little plastic sanitary things that you could put on them and throw them away. You could show them that they're being sanitized. But you're saying that you're losing money during that hours because of no tour. I'm offering it as just a thought, as an alternative, that you would make more money with some patrons on that bus during that extra hour than none at all.
I actually disagree, I apologize.
Well, one thing, and Michael and I we've had many conversations. One of the things I think might have helped, it was a surprise for the people getting on. If it were advertised as, this is an opportunity, we're gonna have a silent, you have this, we put it out as an opportunity. Let them know it ahead of time. Give them a discount. Give them a discount for that, and I know you don't want to discount anything, but I'm trying to help you solve your problems. I mean, we would like, nobody wants anybody to go out of business, and I'm gonna get tweeted on that, as I have been for the last 2 weeks, but anyway, the truth of the matter is we just have issues. We have safety issues. Safety is a wide net for a lot of things, and quality of life is part of safety. The things we were just talking about, the symbols, that's part of safety. Could it be distracting? We've all seen the commercial on television where the guy's on the side and runs into the back of the trash truck. There's 1,000 things that are distracting.
Mayhem.
Yeah, and so, because Michael did that at my request. This was, he asked about it, and I said, do a test.
Lights came out and ran the test for us. And halfway through the tour, they asked to turn it off and go back to house music because people were literally getting off the vehicle.
Yeah.
And I only say that, guys, just to give, I have a transportation company myself. Has nothing to do with your vendor. It's furniture and appliances and stuff like that. But I started out in the 80s as a concert promoter. So I feel both sides of what you're saying, and I want to meet a common ground as well as you guys do. I'm 52 years old, and my family has lived in Nashville for 75 years. So I care about this city. I care about where the trajectory of this city is going. I do not want us to become this lewd Vegas. We are a southern charmed family Bible Belt great community city. That's what we've known for, and I don't want us to get away from that. In the same sense, I know business needs to thrive in this city so that jobs and diversity are here. So everything we're going to suggest is not going to be just to throw it out there. It's not going to be exactly what you want, but it's going to have to be some give and take, because you guys are not our only concern. And as a matter of fact, you're not our greatest concern.
Well, I know this is not the time to speak, but my challenge is I'm going to put on a headset, I'm going to get off Broadway at 10 o'clock, I'm going to go in front of nudies at 110 decibels. That's my problem.
Don't stop in front of
Mr. Chairman, if I could make
Or
a
anywhere
suggestion,
wrong.
the conversations back and forth, we probably do.
We do need to close the conversations back and forth, please. The public hearing is closed. I want to go on to another area here. I saw what you did. I think that's an option they can decide to do if they want to try to meet the noise ordinances through through the headphones in lieu of the enclosed or the monitoring their sound. But looking at safety 050, Mr. Fields, under section E, it talks about to encourage safety, encourage traffic flow during peak rush hours. Now, there was a lot of discussion about closing down between 4 and 6, and I wasn't sure I saw that in these proposed rules, but I was looking at the peak rush hours, and then it says during peak rush hours to be determined by NDOT.
With the new department, with the recreated department of the NDOT, we have many more tools that are coming to our table every day.
Yeah.
A new traffic center is being developed downtown, and I'm about to step further than I can step. Mr. Jones, could you?
It's the Connect Nashville.
Right.
Once we get that study complete, that will give us those peak hours that we're looking.
My concern is right now, we don't really communicate in our rule when they gotta shut down with this kind of, with this left to NDOT to someday tell everybody, so.
Yeah, we were kind of leaving that up to the commission to say what those hours were.
All right, so why don't we address,
How is it?
first of all, are we interested in closing them down during peak hours?
Well, how was it determined for the pedal taverns?
We used our best, actually, we used our best judgment based upon the police coming in here and telling us when traffic.
Why wouldn't the same
And two
logic
traffic
apply?
studies. The difference
two
is,
traffic studies, yeah.
and this is where the engineers, and I apologize, we had engineers for about 3 hours, or close to it. We actually had a traffic study here in Nashville. And what we found was there were some vehicles that could move at the speed and some couldn't. We knew horse and carriages couldn't. We also then had a study and we knew the pedal carriages couldn't. Initially, we didn't let the low speed, the pedal carriages and petty cabs, and we didn't let the low speed vehicles go. A second study revealed that the low speed vehicles could actually go, the golf carts could actually go the speed limit. So it was done very rationally with the pedal carriages. They could not move with the speed that was on the road. What we do have, and I don't have it, I would rather not be the one to address it because it's engineers. What the engineers have said is they can, we know of data that already exists, that we know how fast the traffic's moving on various parts of Broadway, or the downtown area. So Broadway moves pretty well. I mean, you know, anecdotally, you can go from Riverfront to 65 in 6 to 7 minutes, is my remembrance of what the engineers said. That's not true of second, that's not true of now, we can't move second, but third and fourth, that is not true. Third and fourth are much more heavily congested. But again, that's where we would need engineers, and we can have them come back in and make whatever presentation you like.
One of the things when we discussed this section E this evening that, you know, I'm going to recommend is a tweak to the language is that we delete the first section that says during peak rush hour or peak hours, because the next sentence goes on to say they won't operate during peak hours. I'd love for that section to really state that to enhance safety and encourage traffic flow, vehicles must travel at a rate consistent with the flow of traffic and or the posted speed limit, or in the instance of no posted speed limit, 25 miles per hour, and may not operate during peak rush hours as to be determined by NDOT. So this sets a cap, but it doesn't set a floor. So this would allow a bus to roll at 1 mile an hour or 2 mile an hour down the street, which is a public safety problem sometimes. We saw pictures in our email from Ms. Haller of ETVs blocking a constrained street for a ambulance to get to the hospital. I've seen problems of buses on 2nd Avenue blocking fire and life safety coming down 2nd Avenue from the 2nd Avenue substation at 2nd and Elm. You know, some of the reasons that we've seen the police have closed 1st Avenue northbound at Korean Veterans on Friday and Saturday is to be able to get emergency services vehicles in and out because the other streets are blocked with slow-moving vehicles. So I'd love to see not a cap on this, well, a cap on the speed limit, but that if the traffic is traveling at 25, or if you're going over the Korean Veterans Bridge and it's 40, that you're gonna, and everybody's going 40.
Mandatory minimum.
Well,
whatever the speed of traffic is around
the
them.
speed of traffic. I mean, I think that makes a great deal of sense, that, you know, if you're on the public right-of-way with the rest of the public driving,
You're not gonna drive 1 mile an hour.
you need to drive, you know, that's what we're all taught, right?
You need to be civil to those around you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
rude to
yeah.
drive slowly.
Yeah. You know,
It is.
Let me make a couple of suggestions, because again, I know your time is valuable and I appreciate it. One of the things you can do at your next meeting, even though it was a public hearing, there's nothing that would prohibit you asking for professional information. The professional information we can bring is from the Department of NDOTs and through the engineering division, as well as Metropolitan Police Department, bringing in both the central precinct as well as the entertainment group that do the special work on the weekend. So we could, to begin your next meeting, these are the kind of things we could have them come in and you could ask the question and go straight to them, and they would be able to give you best information they have available.
All right, can we note that for 050 subsection E, we'd like some information about flow of traffic, and also just some wording as to meet what Commissioner Hayes has brought up, and that is something that keeps the flow of traffic going.
E and
because
subsection I as well.
And I,
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I'm gonna be a contrarian. I'm not necessarily pushing this position, but if they can move with this flow of traffic, why are we saying they can't operate at a particular
Well,
hour?
and that was gonna ask that same question as a, sort of as a contrarian. I mean, the truth is, if we're talking about, I mean, we haven't talked about the number of vehicles on the road at any given time, but if you're downtown during peak time and everybody's moving at the same rate, I mean, and you've only got 20 or 70 or whatever the numbers are that we're saying, I mean, that's compared to the number of other cars and golf carts and, I mean, it's not.
Taxis and lifts.
And taxis and Ubers and Lyfts, it's not a significant increase during peak time as long as they're traveling with the rate of traffic.
But what if they are the ones who are dictating the rate of traffic?
Because it's a 2-lane street and they're going 2 miles an hour, or it's a 1-lane street, 1 lane.
Well, they're not, if they're impeding traffic, it will be obvious versus flowing with traffic.
Yeah, I mean, which is why sort of the engineers talking about what traffic flow is in Nashville matters to me, you know.
And previously, I believe the reason why we put that in there, because the study showed not just with the flow of traffic, but them going through the red lights and the intersections, that only so many vehicles per signal change were able to go through that signal behind a slow moving vehicle versus behind a regular car. And so it actually was impeding traffic simply because they weren't able to get through the signals as fast as a regular car would, and so it actually created congestion.
Mr. Fields, what section is the chaperone provisions?
Just a second.
I'd like to hear everybody's comments or thoughts about 2, 1.
I think it's.
I'd love to hear your comments, Mr. Fields, about how we came up with 2.
Yeah.
Basically, what we came, that was one of the issues we had when we were talking about safety in general. If we've seen anecdotally a great deal of what may end up being prohibited behavior in a registered world. Many of the companies already have chaperones. The intent, and it may not have been worded properly, was to, based on the number of people, not the capacity, we should have said, instead of the capacity, the number of people. In other words, you're always got to have 1 back there, period, if you've got anybody on there. But once you get to a certain level, you have to carry 2. So if your average tour is 13.8 people, then you probably only need 1 person. But if all of a sudden you're at 25 people, well, can you really, the driver, I don't want the driver participating in the safety of a vehicle in the back. I want the driver driving. Now, that may seem strange, but I don't want the driver, I don't want the driver looking in the rearview mirror and see what's going on. I don't want him looking at a camera. Just the other day, I was visited by a particular officer of the law who reminded me of what hands-free Tennessee means. I do not want their hands on anything except the equipment operating that vehicle. Now, that's my opinion. I can't speak for the commission, but I think that's part of the safety. And I've had that conversation with people in the audience.
What about the suggestion today that we heard from the public about, instead of the number of seating, the number of passengers?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I think it's all about passengers.
I actually do think that's a good change as well. Just taking into account, and this is a little in left field, but we run the children's services at our church, and law states that for so many infants, there needs to be so many chaperones. And that the fact that they brought up technology and monitors, you can't if a monitor's there, that person has to go to react to what they saw on the monitor versus a person being there reacting instantly to what's going on. Again, it sounded like one of the persons that's watching this monitor is the driver. And again, I agree with Mr. Fields, the driver should be the driver and only the driver. The driver shouldn't be the bartender, shouldn't be the monitor, shouldn't be the assistant. The driver should be the driver. And as far as chaperones, that was a great idea in that it should be per passenger count. If I've got 9 people on the truck, I don't need 2 chaperones. I mean, that is redundant. But in the same sense, if that vehicle can hold 30 vehicles, as the number increases, I feel like as a safety point that we should have a per person chaperone count.
Well, if I may make a suggestion about changing the language in 050 subsection H, where it goes with a passenger seating capacity of 15 to 20, I would change that with passengers of 15 to 20. I would remove the A after the with and change passenger to passengers and remove the seating capacity, so it just reads as with passengers of 15 to 20 shall have 1 staff person. And then a little further down there, if an ET vehicle has passengers of 21 or more, change that, to read if the ET vehicle has passengers of 21 or more, removing the A and removing the seating capacities and just changing passenger to plural passengers.
And just thinking out loud as we look, of the 15 to 20, we're actually concerned if there's 9. So if we say 15 to 20, it's kind of silent, and I'll take the bullet on that one. So it may be when passengers present up to 20.
Up to 20. Yeah, up to 20, okay.
Yeah. Greater than 20 goes to 2.
Yeah.
And again, we heard from them that maybe that number's really 25. I don't know. But it strikes me that 20 people is a lot of people.
Yeah. To be serving and to be monitoring.
To be monitoring safety, to be serving, just strikes me.
Also, I think I think it puts a lot of pressure on a chaperone to have to coerce people to behave when they get to the numbers of 20. You're outnumbered. So
it's a little intimidating.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Question about having somebody assigned to ride in the back. So if there's a second chaperone and they're not in the back, they're in the center of the bus with everybody else, that's a problem. I'm just thinking about chaperones, right?
Oh, chaperones,
yes. Chaperone has to ride in the back.
We actually discovered that in New Orleans. That was an issue. The issue of people underage, even people underage. Yeah, that actually was something we were intrigued by in New Orleans, where the basis that you could have a party, but you needed to have some adult supervision when it was appropriate. Now, what did come up today that I obviously wasn't familiar with is bar rules. So one of the things we'd want to do is go back and see what the bar rules are and see if that actually affects our recommendation to you, our legal's opinion and staff recommendation to you.
But I think that my question, and maybe yours is too, it's like, I get if the one is in the back, and we've heard some of them talk about their bartenders are in the back, and that's where their setup is. Would the second one be up front?
Well, actually, these chaperones, maybe it wasn't clear. In talking about the other, those are staff members. We see this as if
so
my
these
mother,
would be in addition to the bartender.
Well, this would actually be people that they would bring. In other words, you would bring on someone who's above 21. If you wanted to have, if a parent wanted to take their children on, that's fine. But the children can't ride alone. The mother would have to sign, or the father, or an adult would have to sign as the chaperone for that person. So it's actually somebody, it's not an employee, it's a non-employee that would be the chaperone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that wasn't my question.
Yeah, we were talking about this H section where we're saying if there's over 20 people, then they should have a second staff person on board to help monitor that.
I'm just wondering why the rules require
to be in the back.
That the staff people ride in the back.
Well, what we want to do is make sure if we were going to have X number of people on the bus or on the vehicle. The driver's the driver, then for every 20, you've got to have one, then you go above it, they would be actually physically in the area where the people are.
But that's not what these rules say.
Yeah, they say in the back.
It says assigned to ride in the back. Oh, with the passenger.
With the passenger.
I was
I
thinking-
see.
Sorry.
So outside
I
of the
need to-
driver,
the
I got
next-
it too.
We
Next
can-
part of the sentence, sorry. I'm thinking about
Oh.
like you, back of the bus,
Yeah.
you know? I apologize.
No,
no,
that's
we're-
how I read it at
I didn't
first.
read the whole
No
sentence.
wonder I
Alright.
was confused.
All right, so we got that confusion cleared up. All right, so we've dealt with the 4 to 6 in the sense of we're gonna wait and get some more feedback about what that means by peak hours. The other challenging one to me seems to be 070 subsection F, which says ET vehicles may only begin operations after 9 a.m. And then the controversial one must cease operations at 11. There's been some discussion, there's been a proposal put on the table about 10 o'clock as a cutoff time. You know, Mr. Fields, I'm not even sure how we resolve whether we have to take a vote on this or what we do, but I think we'll start first with any further discussion about 10 versus 11 versus 12.
Could I ask a question?
Yes,
Is Friday and Saturday night different than the rest of the week?
let's put that on the table.
Because I have no idea.
Yeah.
When do you go to bed on Friday night versus Thursday night?
Me?
At our
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, midnights. Every night.
Every night.
Sorry. I get up like.
I'm 10,
Yeah.
but I get
Yeah,
up at
I'm-
6.
And that's, yeah.
Yeah.
And traditionally, there's been a difference between Monday through, or Sunday through Thursday versus Friday and Saturday nights. In the past, we have at times made it later on Friday and Saturday nights because those are generally entertainment nights.
I do though think that if you are talking about enforcement, whoever that is, it's gonna get them off the street, that simpler is better.
Yeah.
You know, having a set of hours, not some on weekends and some other times and some, I mean, just a thought. You know, for me, I mean, the difference between 10 and 11, I mean, if noise is the issue, can we manage noise? And if noise is managed, then for me, that hour doesn't make any difference. You know, or to midnight doesn't make a difference. But as long, if it's not disturbing the neighborhood when people are, you know, people outside of the bus when they're driving.
What was the thinking behind the Ascend Amphitheater, whether it was Friday night or Tuesday night or Sunday night, having to be cut off at 11 o'clock?
Sound.
Right,
Keep residents sleeping.
yes.
But I feel like that sound ordinance has been in place way prior to Ascend. It was in place for special events. So if I have something at the park, if I have something there, music has to be cut off by 11. So I think I don't know if that's where they took that from, but I do know there were resident complaints about that.
Ascend was also a special exception, right? So there was if we kind of, and I may be wrong here, but my recollection, and I work across the street from Ascend, my recollection is that we had noise ordinances that came into effect around the same time that Ascend opened, and that there was a special provision created for Ascend because it was in a park that were different than the general noise ordinances that were throughout the county. And then there've been further limitations to Ascend relative to things like sound check. You know, got limited to no more than 15 minutes during the day because of the noise it created. There have been additional limitations put on Ascend relative to decibel levels at both the sound board, which is monitored by Metro and monitored by Live Nation, and at the perimeter. So it's my recollection is it's 85 decibels at the perimeter and 105 decibels at the sound board.
But I guess going back to yours of the 9 and the 10, I mean, I'm with you if they can contain the sound. I think that eliminates that issue, but I think your other concern was traffic congestion, and I guess the other part is, I know we're not discussing that at the moment, but if we limit the amount of permits that we hand out, that may also help with that traffic congestion in that hour.
And also,
May not be an issue, but again, not discussing
It might not be an issue, and
Yeah.
it might be helpful to get comment from the police department about that when there are multiple events and what goes on with that, and,
Right, because
you
it
know.
is extremely slow.
Right.
Trying to get out of downtown if it's in that time frame, but
Mr. Fields, what was the who had input and what was the reason behind picking 11?
I don't recall all of the input. I can, because we have had lots of input. What I can tell you is the general idea was it appeared, based on people talking, that most things were ending, in other words, like pred games, 11 o'clock. This was happening, so it was basically, okay, can we finish at about the same time these events are turning out to let the traffic flow? It was about a congestion issue. You know, I don't think, we did not do a study and say, okay, all the events and, you know, it ended at different times, but that was I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just, there's so much going on
Yeah.
between
So,
one-time
you know,
events.
we knew there was an ascend rule, and we also then were hearing, at least anecdotally, that there were a great deal of events that there was like a time change, that 10:30 to 11 o'clock period. So in bowing to being, it was 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10:30 might have been a better time, but when you start balancing out, we said 11 looks like it would be something that would fit in between a lot of conversations I had with the industry, that some of them wanted midnight, and others are saying, Billy, I get done at 9:30, I'm done, or I'm gonna get done at 10:15. So it's about operations.
And there may be a better way to, or another way to frame it too, is if we're away from high-density residential and we're away from hotels and where people sleep at 11 o'clock or at 10 o'clock, we're not going to be people won't be upset.
Well, at 11 o'clock, they're going to be off the street.
Well, if it's 10.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, like, you know, you look at the residents that have come in this evening or that have written us letters, and they want to go to bed.
Yeah, no, I'm on traffic now, because if things are letting out at 11 o'clock, these ET vehicles are off the streets at 11 o'clock.
Right.
So they're not impeding traffic.
Correct.
That's coming out of Bridgestone or coming out of Ascend. Now, the noise,
The noise is a
if
different
they got the noise under control as they're gonna have to, then at 10 o'clock, there shouldn't be an issue.
One way or the other, noise is gonna be in control.
Yeah.
I think most of those people know me pretty well. I'm the fair guy in the room, and I've been tweeted about that too. I expect, this commission expects to follow those rules, and if quiet's 50 feet's 50 feet, I'm ordering decibel readers for a lot of people, and you're gonna be looked at. They know that. So I believe they're gonna follow these rules when they're in place.
But if we back up, aren't there already existing noise ordinances within the county that would apply?
Oh,
That
yeah.
have not been adhered to for years?
But they're gonna be, though.
That gets us to enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enforcement is a challenging part, and it is not within the authority of the Transportation License Commission or its staff to enforce noise ordinance. That's the reason we have partnered with the Metropolitan Police Department, both the Central and then the Entertainment District group, to make sure that we have compliance on vehicles.
I can share some experience we've had in the past too, is that if we start getting complaints from community members downtown, that the noise is disruptive from 10 to 11, we can certainly back to 10 o'clock.
Come back and revisit it.
Yeah. That's why, again, this is an evolving set of rules, but we gotta come down with some structure so the companies, if they're authorized, can comply, and then if if we start finding that there's issues, we can come back and tweak these things. But I agree with Mr. Fields, the noise is if they're gonna operate, they're gonna have to operate within the noise ordinance. And to make another thing real easy, the QR requirement,
You can.
you wanna explain that one? And then I think we ought to put it on there.
The thought was really driven by driving on the highway behind any number of big rigs, right? And they don't have QRs, but they say, if you see a problem, call here. Gives a 1-800 number, and it's we have a sticker that shows.
How's my driving?
It's big and it's visible.
The ones
How's my driving? Yes, sir. How's my driving? Do you have them on your trucks?
No.
No.
Well, and I say this, all my trucks are leased through a national company, so.
All I ever see says, stay back 500 feet, and if we hit you with something, it's your own
Different
fault.
type of truck, yeah.
But
That was-
anyway, can we all kind of agree that the trucks have to have something like that would be real easy to take a picture with your phone and contact the transportation licensing
Hub Nashville or
Commission.
Transportation
Yeah,
License,
and we'd
whatever
like to
the
get the
right.
hub, because it captures it. But
Yeah.
yes, we certainly, Mr.
we'll
Hayes had brought that to my attention, and again, he's a young thinker as opposed to me.
Well, and
And it was a good idea.
My next question,
We're-
and I
we're-
don't know enough
but-
about
but
creating
we're
QR
also
codes,
at,
but that QR code would be unique to that specific vehicle, so they know which company and which vehicle it was and which driver for them. Okay.
That was an idea, but
Yeah.
it's something that if you're standing 100 feet away or
Yeah,
you're
it's
driving,
the size of a
Yeah.
cereal
that
box.
it's big, how's my driving? Or report a
Right.
problem, or something that makes it,
No, I know that part, but when you said the QR code, I didn't know would it just automatically go to.
So what section would that go under?
That'd be
With the sign, I think.
Probably
the signage.
under, where were we, under vehicles. Mr. Chairman, it is now 5:39.
All right. Anybody got a burning desire on some of the remaining issues at all at this point?
I had one issue, and we don't need to discuss it now, is about where they pick up and pick off, or drop off.
Yeah.
We need to quit, obviously.
The
that came up.
depots,
Yeah, I mean,
for those who have depots. and
apparently
those who
some
do
have
not.
private property where they're doing it. Should you require that of everybody? Is that reasonable? I have no idea. I'm just
I think we need to discuss that though, about drop off and pickup, upload and unload.
Can I lump something in on that?
The other big area,
And we heard that, just lump something in on, is the facilities issue. We've heard several business owners come in and say, I think there needs to be a designated route, time, something, every 3 hours, every 4 hours, do it once during the tour, so that we do not have established businesses downtown having to facilitate tours that they have no income or interest in providing facilities for the tours.
Well, what we proposed in the ordinance is you may only drop off
Yeah.
and you may pick people up or let people out at places designated by Metro, which will be through traffic and parking, I'm sure, and NDOT. And then only on private property. So the idea of being able to pull up in front of a bar, unless you've got a permission to do it, it's not gonna happen anymore. That's part of the traffic issue of the congestion. Now, does that mean that I wouldn't recommend some? Again, it's decisions some of y'all talk about.
okay, it looks like what's left to have, some big issues left to discuss are routes, the 500 feet from schools, parks, whether parks be included. But anyway, routes, we're gonna get more information about operation hours. We're gonna talk about the railing heights. And we just,
I will say railing heights on my building inspections, on any outdoor patio, the codes inspector, it says 42 to 48. He will fail us if we're not at 48.
okay,
No matter how far back it is, we built some and had to rip them out.
bring that at the next
Couldn't-
meeting.
couldn't
Come on,
get
we're
further.
moving on. All right, pick up and drop off, we got, talk about fixed sites for that, insurance, and then we need to start thinking about the discussions about what's the difference between an entertainment,
Yes.
transportation vehicle and a cultural education vehicle. And Mr. Fields, under other business, I can't make a motion or anything, but there's a letter here from Commissioner Rogers to Director Alarcon.
We discussed
No.
that earlier.
Yes,
done that.
I would like
We've done
to
that.
make it, I would like to see if someone would make a motion to make it part of the minutes, or part of the record or the minutes of this meeting today.
Actually, anything that comes up on the table, we put it as part of the record.
Good.
All right, I've taken care
It
of
will
my
not
own.
necessarily appear in the minutes unless there was a motion, but it will be a part of the package of information we collect.
All right. Is there any other business from folks?
Quick request, Mr. Fields, could you reach out to the Knoxville Department of Transportation and ask them if they can share any of their preliminary data relative to their noise test cameras?
Relative to what?
Knoxville's piloting a system to help with noise enforcement in their urban core, and it's a series of microphones and cameras that if you're too loud, it takes a picture and it gives you a citation.
Really?
Yeah, and they're used in other countries, and they're being tested in North America. But Knoxville's in the middle of a pilot right now because they've got a problem with loud vehicles downtown. They're more engines revving. But it's an acoustically tuned microphone with a camera and a solar panel and a cell signal.
You'll reach out to that, Mr. Fields?
And give us a report, please.
That's unfair if they are.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting closed. Folks, I think you'll have to go out.